All right, it's 3:30, and so to keep things on schedule, we will begin. Mr. Bolden with a prayer, please.
Let us pause for a moment for prayer. Father, we come before you with gratitude. We thank you for being a God of love who is with us now in this very room. Your grace has brought us safe this far, and your grace will carry us forward. We thank you for making each of us in this room, every person we meet, every citizen of this city, and every city in your own image with dignity and infinite worth. We thank you for calling you have given each and one of us as to be good stewards of your creation, to love our neighbors as ourselves. Father, we thank you for those, your servants, our mayor, our city manager, our city staff, and our city council members. Give thanks for the way of service they have chosen to take on behalf of the citizens of Nacogdoches. We all come to this room tonight as human beings, carrying burdens, carrying joy, carrying hope, trusting that you alone can hold us together in your love and peace. Help us, Lord, to trust you more than our fears and our wounds and even our accomplishment. We pray for wisdom, for strength, for courage to do what is right and good for all citizens. May we put the interests of others above our own. May we act with love for common good. May we be good neighbors, recognizing your image in every person here. We thank you again for this council, our mayor, our city employees, our police force, our fire department, and all those who work to make this place we call home such a wonderful city. In the name of Jesus, who perfect love sets us free from all fears. Amen.
Amen. I'll call our meeting to order. If you'll rise for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item on our agenda is open forum. Do we have anyone signed up for open forum? No. Okay. Have no one for open forum. We'll move on to our work session. Presentation of department budgets for fiscal year 2022, 2023. City Manager Canizares will start us off there.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council, members of the community, and staff. So this is the kickoff with the budget as far as conversations with staff and city council. Staff has been at, as far as doing the budget for a number of weeks now, months actually. And so this is kind of the beginnings of this for council. Comments that I've heard in the past from the last process that you all enjoy hearing from the departments and be able to explain kind of what they are presenting and what they're up to. Some of the feedback I heard at the conclusion of last year's process that you would like to start earlier. As far as the process, we have that. We've done that. We are actually 2 weeks ahead of where we were last year. You also mentioned that again you enjoy hearing from the departments. You enjoy having FaceTime with the departments. You also mentioned to me that you would like to hear directly from the departments about all the requests. So what you're going to hear today is basically their budget proposals, their requests. Doesn't mean everything's going to get funded. It's just you all had asked for that, and so they're going to do that. We've asked the departments to be concise in their comments. We obviously will be happy to take any questions and comments from the council, but we want to be concise and go through the process. But again, going here on the screen, you'll see the priorities and challenges that we face as an organization. These aren't new to any organization. We have a number of vacancies throughout the organization that we need to address. It's a tough labor market, tough job market, maintaining competitive pay for our employees. Obviously, we don't want to lose any more employees, but it is one of those things that we have to look at because of just inflationary costs and you know, what can we do to hopefully hold the line there. We've had some huge claims in our self-insurance fund. Ms. Kerbo, earlier today, we did receive proposals from insurance carriers, so it's too soon to tell where that is, but we did receive some new bids, and so we'll be analyzing that over the coming weeks and come back to you with the recommendation. The issues that we have with energy, just like we're having all over the country, gas prices continue to obviously increase, and energy prices when it comes to electricity keep operations going. You'll hear from the departments the inflationary cost issues with supply chain, the lack of materials and the cost of services and goods. Again, that's pretty much happening all over the country. And the last piece really is sort of a new thing, is again, as we move ahead and look forward to the near future, addressing some of our infrastructure needs. We've been having conversations with you since last November. We've had conversations from the last fall and the early year, then we had some conversations this spring. And so we'll be obviously coming towards that conclusion later this summer, and Ms. Kerbo will talk about that in some of her materials here in just a moment. But that's an issue that we need to address. And so it's that time of the year, and then we need to start looking at those things. So at the end of the day, we'll be working, Ms. Kerbo and I, along with our respective department heads, we'll be working to pare down these requests. We can't fund everything, there's just no way, but we need to look at these things. And so we really want to hear the input that you all have. What are key things that you want to see? And then if they can be funded, we absolutely want to obviously incorporate those into a proposed budget. And so with that, that's all the comments I have at this point. I'll be happy to turn it over to Pam to see if she has any housekeeping items for today.
Mayor, council, today you're going to hear from Municipal Court and the police department, the fire department, and from Public Works, which is multiple departments. Understanding that we are very early in the numbers process, and so even today you're going to see a couple of numbers that have changed. We found earlier today, Mr. Bartlett found a typo in one of the line items so you're gonna see a little bit of difference. Understand from now going forward, these numbers are very much a moving target at this point because we are constantly reviewing. We normally spend an entire week just going back and looking at every single line item to make sure that we didn't transpose numbers, that we didn't add an extra zero. So that has not been done yet. So keep in mind, these numbers we think are good, but there could always be those issues because we just haven't gotten to that point in the process yet. What you're going to see included in these numbers today are going to be an increase in the city paid employee health insurance premiums. We have so far, and in anticipation of this bid that was received today, we know that we're going to see an increase in our claims. We have over the last year, so we know that our new re-rate is going to be higher than it has been in the past. So we have tentatively plugged in an increase of, currently our rate is $660 per month per employee. I have plugged in $725 per month per employee, and we're hopeful that will be enough, but we'll just have to wait and see how these bids look today. That is about $250,000 increase across all funds. So you're going to see the numbers you see today, the increase in city paid health insurance premiums is included. Another thing that is included in these numbers is our fuel cost increase. We, of course, like most people in the world, estimated last year's fuel for this year at $2.75, $2.70. It's closer to $4.50 now. So that is about a $500,000 increase across all funds for fuel cost. Those numbers are already plugged in. We also have increased our electricity cost. Right now we're estimating about $1 million increase across all funds, the large portion of that being in the utility fund, just because the water pumps and plants pull the most demand. That is still in the process of being reviewed because we have yet to get a bill with the new rate. They start coming this month. And so we are still making sure that we've estimated that. I feel like we may be a little bit on the low side, unfortunately. So that will be one of those numbers over the next week or two that we'll be really honing in on. And then, of course, every department every year has operational increases that they request, and that's part of what they'll be going over today, things that they need to continue at the current operations with the current programs that we have. What is not included in these numbers? We have not included any type of payroll item related to a COLA, to a merit raise, to market adjustments. There are 3 positions in the police department that were frozen a couple of years ago, if y'all will recall. Those positions we were just not able to fill at this time. Those have not been added back to the budget. That is something that at some point in the future, when we're able to restart refilling, we hope to be able to do that. Currently, that amount is not still in that budget. There are no monies included for recruitment and retention programs. That is something that I think Chief Weems will be going into a little bit in depth in his department, some needs that they have there. Those numbers are not included here either. And as well, we have included no additional new programs or personnel that have been requested. So those are the things that as we go through this process this summer, if you have programs or personnel that go with these programs that you're interested in adding, just understand that the numbers today do not include those things. So what are we looking at for a timeline on our budget? As I mentioned, our health insurance rate, the bid was opening today. We'll be in the process of reviewing that and hope to come to you on the July 19th council meeting with a proposal for that, the new process for that. We'll know then what our good numbers are, so we'll know then if the premium increase that we have plugged in is going to be sufficient or if we're going to need more. We also will be on the 19th bringing you a resolution of intent to issue COs. If y'all will recall, back during our CIP meetings, we decided, I think it was April meeting when we did the summary, that there are about $20 million worth of possible COs that can be issued this year to replace the debt like for like that is rolling off in September. And so we are going to be bringing to you on the 12th an updated amount, because as you know, all the interest rates have changed a lot since we gave you that first proposal. So our financial advisors are right now working on a new updated proposal for y'all to give us an idea of exactly how much we'll be able to issue for the like for like, so that there's no change in the debt rate. So that is another thing that will be coming in July. The importance of the timing on that one is if we are going to issue the COs, then we have to build the property tax rate based on that new debt. So we have $1 million rolling off in September. If we're gonna replace that, then we need to know that in the process of calculating the property tax rate with the appraisal district. And so we do not have to have it issued by the time that we adopt the tax rate. It just has to be planned for that fiscal year. So right now the plan would be to sell early in the fiscal year, October or November, but if we're going to do it, we have to set the property tax rate, of course, as y'all know, in September. And so that's why there's about a 3-month process in order to issue those COs. So that is why the July 19th is an important date for us if we're going to proceed with that, so that we can set the property tax rate correctly. Property tax, speaking of that, we'll receive our assessed values. State deadline is July the 25th, and so the appraisal district will give us our either our certified or our estimated certified assessed value by that date, and then that way we can begin calculating the tax rate to bring to y'all on August 2nd. So between now and the time that we actually adopt the budget, you are going to have quite a few times that we're going to be talking. Y'all are probably going to get very tired of hearing from me, but we have today, of course, and then we have the second half of our departments will be presenting to you on July the 12th. And then on July the 19th, we will have a handful of items, there being the health insurance and the intent for the issuance of the COs, as well as a discussion on implementing a senior tax ceiling as we discussed at the last meeting. So that we'll be bringing back to you with some figures as we were requested. And then August the 2nd will be the first time that you actually see a draft budget. So at that point, we will hope to have our property tax assessed values in and a property tax rate for y'all to be presented with, as well as a draft budget that night. And then, of course, we have 2 workshops, and those will both be very, from there forward is kind of the same process. The July 12th and 19th is kind of an addition this year that we've kind of y'all wanted to see earlier, so we have a few extra workshops this year than we have in the past. So as you can see, we're going to be working through these numbers for quite some time now. And then, of course, adoption of the tax rate and the budget will be in September. And if y'all don't have any more questions, I think we can start with the department. So
I have a couple questions. So do I need to talk into this so it's recorded or not?
yeah, it should pick you.
Okay. So my 2 questions are, I think, one is about your calendar, and I think, isn't August 2nd National Night Out? Oh, it's
National Night Out in Texas is the first Tuesday in October.
in October.
Yes,
Oh,
ma'am.
okay, thank you, that's all I was wondering. And then, I had asked before about what we're looking at. It's not part of this budget, and it's not part of, anyway, I was trying to find out some kind of estimate of how much the water bill will increase and how much, if we're talking about fees, any kind of estimate before we get into that process. I would really like our best guess at what's going on with that before we.
So what I did is very roughly, because a rate study is a very in-depth process.
I understand.
That takes into weather patterns and all those types of things. But if, let's just say, I think we had discussed on some of our CIP meetings, the need for a future bond issuance for the Lanana and Bonita Creek sewer.
Right.
So that is sewer only, so that doesn't affect water rates, it would be sewer only. So in order to issue a $25 million bond, which we already have $5 million that is set aside in the current budget, estimating 25 additional, that may or may not be the number, but that's what we use to run the numbers. On a 20-year bond, that's $1.6 million in annual interest and principal payments. Now, that was before all the interest rate stuff, so that number is going to be a little bit different, but it's about $1.6 million a year that we're going to have to increase revenues. Sewer revenues are around $9 million a year, so we got to go to 10.6. So roughly, you're looking at, across all boards, you're looking at a 20% increase just for that one particular thing. Now, what we're doing with the water rate study is looking to make sure that our rates are covering all of our existing infrastructure needs, our existing depreciation, our existing bond payments. And so there's gonna be some things that they have to plug in all those additional items as well. But, so that's what makes it very difficult on the water side, because on the sewer side, we have one particular project that you wanted to know, what would it cost to do this? So I can tell you, you're gonna be taking probably a 20% increase just on the sewer side across the board. Now, some categories may be 10%, some may be 28%, depending, because that is gonna be what the rate study will look at, commercial as related to industrial and residential and that type of thing. So, you know, it very, very broadly, just for that one particular thing, you're looking at least 20% probably.
So for everything combined, we're looking at, what, 20% plus fees?
Well, the
plus-
thing with water is we don't have a specific, this is one project we need to do and issue bonds for. We did have that for the Lanana and Bonita Creek Trail, because on the water side, we don't have a specific thing that we were looking to do bonds for immediately. There's a lot of stuff in the future, but as far as our tier 1 priorities that we were looking at covering, the Lanana Bonita was the one thing that we were gonna do the revenue bonds for. So, I mean, you know, we can take and run 1,000 scenarios if you want, but I mean, that's what, for the sewer, for that particular CO,
That's just-
it's
yeah, right.
you're looking at least 20%.
So we had talked earlier about, and maybe this will be covered later in the presentation, but it looks like this is apart from that. Before we get to July 19th, I would like a really good understanding of what those water bills, because we talked about the fees might start as early as October. So by now, we should have a guess anyway. And my father was a weatherman, and he used to ask people, you know, if I put, actually this is what he said, if I put a case of bourbon for you to really give a good prediction, what would you guess now? And that really helped. I mean, I'm not gonna give you a case of bourbon, but I think I mean, if we're talking about something starting as early as October, this really has an impact on what I think about as we raise revenue for other things.
So at this point, we are not asking to raise revenues in October. Raise rates.
Raise rates.
Yeah, in October. We are asking to do the rate study, so that would be something we bring to you next year for the next year's rates. We are not proposing any rate increases for October 1 on water and sewer.
Okay.
Because we need the study in order to know what to raise those rates. We are not asking for a water rate in October.
Or any fees or anything like that?
Water or
Early-
sewer, I
or
don't, when you
fees?
say fees, what fees?
Additional fees?
For water and sewer department?
In my utility bill.
Not on the utility bill, no.
But other fees maybe?
I know that there's a couple of departments that are gonna ask for some rate stuff,
Okay.
but I don't know that,
Okay,
Steve,
well,
you don't
that's-
have any of your departments, no.
Okay, well, thanks.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to municipal court.
I'm Judge Watts. I'm Heather Watts. I'm the Nacogdoches Municipal Court Judge, and this is the court's budget presentation. These are the number of full-time employees that we have at the court. There's currently myself. I'm the judge and also the court administrator. We do have a head clerk along with 2 other clerks, and then the .5 is actually a part-time bailiff position that is currently outsourced. So we do contract out for that. This is our revenue. So our revenue amounts are based, as you can see, the line that goes down here. These are actually for a court. They are based on the amount when someone pays a ticket or a citation. It is broken out into fines and fees, the majority of which goes to the city. And then the rest goes into a court cost, which most of which goes to the state. However, the state does allow for specialized funds, such as the child safety fund, building security funds, and they've broken out small amounts from each court cost that can go to the city for specialized uses. And these are where our revenues come in. And so we are looking right now at a possible actual of 406,000. And maybe next year we've proposed for 408,000. That actually is hard to predict because it depends on the number of cases that are filed with the court. This is currently the cases that have been filed with the court by NPD. 99% of the cases filed with the court do come from NPD. And as you can see, starting in 2017, the number of cases filed were much higher. That leads to higher revenue rates. At the current time, the 1,600 was actually through April 15th, but we do estimate that it'll be around the same as that for 2020. So these are our proposed expenses. We are asking for, we were budgeted this year at 300,000, and we're asking for 309, the majority of which simply is electrical cost. Oops. Do y'all have any questions?
Just one quick question.
Sure.
On the bailiff,
Uh-huh.
do they have to be certified?
Well, we contract out with a company that provides peace officers that actually are used as bailiffs. Normally, if we hire someone, they are certified in some way, but normally they're actually retired peace officers. At the moment, these are actually off-duty sheriff's department
right.
officers for the most part.
Do they have to be sheriff department?
They don't. No, the
Okay.
the company that we're currently using just tends to use off-duty sheriff's department
Okay.
officers.
Thank you.
Sir?
Anybody else? Chuckman?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Scott, pull that a little closer to you.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
I promise this won't be as short. I am Scott Weems with the Nacogdoches Police Department, and I'm interim chief right now, and I would like to go over our proposed budget for 22-23 and some of the struggles we're facing. As you can see, we have several vacancies, one in administration, one in CID, soon to be 2, 9 in patrol, and 4 in dispatch. And we have, as Pam pointed out, we have 3 frozen positions. So I don't think we're going to get there in this fiscal year, this next fiscal year, but we would like to get close. And I can do that with your help. And I'm going to ask you for it soon. So the numbers we have proposed, let me get to my notes. There's a lot of these items that had to increase this year, or for next year, and that would be due to us trying to hire future employees, officers mainly. So we have discovered that there are no certified officers that are willing to come to the Nacogdoches Police Department anymore. So we've had to go back to trying to hire cadets that we send to the academy. And in doing so you're 6 months out and you're paying a salary plus the academy plus the to and from, the fuel, which has went up considerably. And so we had to increase those budget items, line item budgets, to adjust for that increase. We're wanting to try to get at least 4 to 6 cadets to send to the academy. And I can tell you that's going to be very difficult. And just a side note, we started with 20 applicants previously, or recently. We told them the testing dates. 14 of those showed up. Out of the 14, we went through the written and physical and interview part of the testing. And of the 14, 3 of those made that. And once we got to the background, one of those, or two of those got kicked out. So we started with 20, ended up with 1. So with that in mind, it's very difficult to try to hire somebody in this day and age to come be a police officer. And it's the same for dispatch also. It's just difficult. Dispatch is a multitask, actually a multitask job, and there's a lot going on in there, as you noticed. So, and that was on a light day. But you'll see the increases. So when we do this, when we try to hire cadets, our ammo increases, our uniforms increase, again, our fuel cost increase. So you're just going to see a lot of these increases that I'll try to explain to you as we go when it's time for questions. Some of our contract services went up. Our maintenance fees went up because we've added Benchmark Analytics, which is a new software program that it's kind of it's a one site for everything, your use of force, your accidents, pursuits, your IAs, your early warning systems on officers. So it kind of covers all of that. But then we're going to move on. We are also, you'll notice, the new police vehicles, that is a rolling account. We keep $400,000 in there every year. We build upon it every year. That's something that Pam keeps up with, and that's just to replace the vehicles that we wear out on an annual basis. And so that is kind of a non-issue. That's something that's already in place. Am I correct? Yes. Okay. Now, the next one is the fully equipped police ATV. So we do a lot of the festivals. In this recent one, you will notice that we were borrowing golf carts to get around because the current ATV that we have is like 20 years old. It's an embarrassment to the city and to the police department. And so we're asking for a new one. And we'll get to questions on that in a little bit. I know Dan's got a lot on that already. And also, an evidence supervisor. That's a new position that we've come up with. So when we're trying to hire officers, and it being very difficult, we still need the relief. So in lieu of hiring an officer, we're going to try to hire an evidence supervisor and have 2 civilians underneath that evidence supervisor. One for strictly evidence and call-outs and to help not only the detectives but the police officers. and then also be over the regular day-to-day mundane office assistant jobs, which would be transferring cases to the prosecutors, fielding calls for the detectives, and so forth. So I think that's a small price to pay. It's well under what we pay an officer, and they can do some of the tasks that we normally have to give to a detective or give to the patrol officer. And by the way, back to that first slide, we are 12 down in officers. That means that's a whole shift. That means that we have had to pull officers from street crimes and from traffic. So you don't have the services you used to have. You don't have the tickets that the judge was talking about earlier. That's one of the factors. If you go back to pre-COVID, we were doing fine, as her chart showed. But after COVID and after our struggle with hiring officers, we're down a complete shift. I hope that resonates, because we're almost to critical. Right now we can cover it because we pull from these outside units, but after that, we're gonna get serious. So we'll be losing services that we can't afford to lose. So anyway, that it? I've got more. So, on a good note, we had some accomplishment last year. We got accredited by the TPCA. We did a Spielman migration with SFA to improve the service provided to the community and our partners in the community. Our goals this year would be just to recruit more experienced officers, and in order to try to get away from sending the cadets. You're a year down the road when you send a cadet to the academy, because it's 6 months worth of the academy and then 6 months worth of FTO. So anywhere in that time frame, that person could fail out of the program. So you're back to square one and you've got all this money invested. We would like to attract more experienced officers, so to speak, steal from other agencies. I know it sounds bad, but that's what they're doing from us. It makes it easier to do a lateral transfer and plug that officer in at that level, that skill level that he's in. It's easier on everybody at the department and better for the community. So what I'm asking is, let's see if we can up our game a little bit like Lufkin did right after y'all did a great job, 2 years ago, 18 months ago, when we upped the recruitment and upped the salary. Well, we did that to recruit, but we kind of left the retention part of it out. So we had a compression issue where we shot a number up real high to recruit new officers, but then we left the older officers, the ones with a good experience and a good skill set, we left them just right above them. Well, that sent a message, and it sent a negative message. It said, we want to get some people here, some brand new people here, because we got a 1 to 3 year department right now. But what are we doing with the skill set we already have? Well, I figured out what we're doing. We're letting them leave. So we just had an officer that was highly skilled in accident reconstruction, traffic enforcement, 15 years, Chad. We've got another one coming, 22 years. He's been trained, highly skilled in street crimes, highly skilled in detective work. He's leaving. He's getting a better paying job. We got to stop the bleeding. So we got to get this done. So all we ask is for a little bit of help. So let's continue, if y'all got time. High-stress jobs. These jobs, I know just going out and contacting the public, that's high stress. But we've had a dispatcher had to retire due to PTSD when the deputy got killed on 259, and they sent him out there. So that's the reality. Let's see. We always meet people in their worst day routinely. That builds a, just, it wears on that person pretty bad. Recruiting and retention. We're currently recruiting inexperienced officers that want to go to the academy to become an officer. Retaining experienced officers is different in a sense that you have to reward them for the knowledge and experience that comes with them for the many years on the job. This becomes challenging when other agencies are driving, within driving distance, are offering better benefits such as merit-based step pay, assignment pay for 4 different assignments, higher education pay, and increased certification pay. And the other agency I'm talking about is Lufkin. So when we did ours, Lufkin did the leapfrog effect, and they beat us severely. They increased their officer salary range from 50,000 upwards to 77,000. So starting 50, upwards to 77, topping out. Ours is at 45, topping out at 59. So we cannot beat that. Okay, these are the things that we do not have, but they do have. Lufkin assignment pay. Accident reconstruction, $100 a month. All this is per month. SWAT team, $300 a month. FTO pay, assignment pay, $100. T-Cole trainer, $100. Investigator, $200. And you're allowed to have at least 3 assignment pays per officer. So you could have an investigator who is on the SWAT team and also an FTO, and he's upwards of $600 a month added to his base salary. We're way behind. We have people like that. We have officers, highly skilled officers like that we're not rewarding nor trying to keep. And their certificate pay is almost double of ours as you progress. They also have military, bilingual, associate's degree, bachelor's degree, and master's degree pay. So we're getting beat pretty bad. The Texarkana, out of the 6, out of the 6 comparable cities that the survey was done on, Texarkana was the last, but they only beat us by about $900 a year. So if that tells you anything, we're at the very bottom almost of the cities we surveyed on officer's salary, sergeant's salary. Dispatch was kind of close to the third. So, with that being said, I'm going to open it up for questions.
So the chart, the expense chart that you showed us earlier with the increase in personnel to about 7.8 million, what causes that difference? Is there any of that incentive pay that you're talking about in that proposed number?
None. Okay.
So are you planning to give us a proposal on what you think it'll take and what you think it'll cost?
We can work that out on the, I'm gonna have to get with Pam on that, but on the retention part of it and trying to hire laterally instead of sending cadets. But yes, we can provide that.
I mean, that's the first piece. We've got to understand what the gap is.
Right.
And then we'll start. So tell me, so what is that $180,000?
So I'll answer that because I budget personnel, so I don't want to put him on the spot. The difference between the 7.714 and the 7.793, that is 100%, well, and it's not 100%. The majority of that is health insurance premium increases.
Okay, all right.
But there is also an increase in their overtime because unfortunately with being short-staffed, you think, oh, we don't have those positions filled, we're saving money. We're not saving money because we're still having to provide the same level of services. We're just asking the current employees to work a little more. And so overtime is at an elevated rate. And so I have plugged in a little bit of an overtime increase, but then the majority of that is gonna be the health insurance premiums.
Then the other big jump in supplies, what is that?
Supplies, that is fuel for the police cars. Theirs went up over $100,000, I believe,
Right.
For next year because they, of course, use a significant amount of fuel.
Okay, well, that's what I'd like to see is, propose some level that would at least get us part way to what you're trying to accomplish and let us see what it's gonna cost.
Okay.
Anybody else?
This just keeps us at level, right?
Yes, this is just
does.
current.
And you can only work somebody so many extra hours before they're burnt out, and we're looking for somebody else. We got 2 leaving right now. We got 2 that are about to leave us. So again, we'll be at the critical stage before too long.
Where are they going?
One is going to, can I say this? Well, one's going to the state. He's going to OIG. He'll be working prison investigations at a $11,000 a year raise with a take-home car, and he won't be on call every 6 weeks like he is now. He'll be on call every 14 weeks. So you can't pass that up, and you can't fault him for that. The other one has a family reason that he has to move, and he can get a job anywhere else, because when you're trained here, if you keep your nose clean, you can get a job anywhere you want. So,
But your sense is that generally speaking, so not particularly with these 2 officers, but generally speaking, surrounding PDs are
paying
taking-
more.
Well,
They're-
and taking.
Right, right. In the past, we've lost to the UPD, we've lost to NISD, and surrounding agencies. Angelina County, I think Lufkin PD, a couple, the Sheriff's Department. So, we're a training ground. If we don't up our game, we're a training ground. If we up our game, we can start taking from, we had a period there, after the 18, however long ago it was that we upped the recruitment part. We had a period where we were attracting more people, but then, once those agencies started up in their game, then we fell right back down, the vine dried up. So,
As a side note, you'll notice contractual services increased as well. That is where travel and training is also located. And so when you have an influx of new officers, they have to be trained. And so there is an increase. I think they asked for $25,000 additional travel and training for their department this year. And so that's where that is. So there's a lot of components. It's not just the salary. It flows through fuel, it throws through training and that type of thing too. So those things are built in here, but like you said, not any new positions and not any raises or adjustments for current positions.
right. Advertising increased because we're trying to recruit more. Just some of the things that stands out. Yeah. Food supplies increased. We're trying to wine and dine some of the cadets that are already in the academies, both academies, and see if we can attract them to Nacogdoches PD.
I think Mr. Bolden.
Yeah, well, let me just ask one quick.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Now, who are you using as a recruiting tool right now? Because I noticed in one of the pages there, you go into a different company.
Indeed.
We did, with varying results. We had a lot of applicants right off the bat. One was he was living in Mexico, and he wasn't gonna work out. One was a felon. So we have to be careful what we use, who we attract. Our Facebook page is real good if we put an attractant out there, because that's where we've got 2 candidates right now that saw our Facebook page and are coming down to test Thursday. Is that right? Mm-hmm. 3, I'm sorry. One's coming to retest. But they're coming from Killeen, Texas. So that's what we're looking for.
So
Getting the word
quality,
out.
are you just missing the quality of the applicants?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, I mean, I think the police force in Nacogdoches, personally, I think they're doing a great job.
Thank you, sir.
And if I was looking, well, I mean, 50 years ago, if I was looking for a position as a police officer, and I knew about this department, I'd be more than happy to join the police force, except for the year-end reports that y'all give out. But it just truly bothers me that new recruits, and let me go back with the experienced officers, that they are not at the top pay compared to maybe 6 other cities around here. But would that assignment pay bring them up close to that level?
It would help with retention, for sure.
Okay.
And yes, sir, it would.
So I mean, as a city council, where I was here before me, we have never asked city council for assignment pay.
To my knowledge, we have not.
Okay. You know.
There is an
It's just
aspect-
me personally speaking, but if I was close to the top and was drawing assignment pay, I'd just rather be in Nacogdoches than in place else.
Without me getting in the weeds, but I can go by my own experience, when I started, I moved up the ranks in patrol, I got to sergeant of patrol. And so that was a bump in and of itself because of the promotion. I always wanted to be a detective. And so when one came available, I voluntarily demoted, is what they called it, and I got the detective slot. But at that time, it was a 10% addition on top of my base salary, so it was kind of a wash. So back then, it was already in effect, but then we started whittling it down over the years to where we brought everybody up to that skill set pay, and now it's even. So an officer and a detective make the same thing, so it kind of washed that 10% away over the years, and we're back to, we don't have assignment pay anymore. And that's the closest I can get to explaining assignment pay that we did have 15 years ago,
Yeah,
20.
with experienced officers, you know, there's so much room at the top, and usually that's why you see one of them will go to another police.
Right, and that's what we're facing now is there's only so many places you can go at Nacogdoches Police Department to either A, make more money or
Yeah.
get promoted or wherever you want to go. So I think we need to, as we build the skill set in these officers, we need to try to pay for the skill set to retain the skill set. I mean, we do it everywhere else. We would do it in the IT department, we would do it at the bank, we would do it at the law firm. So there's no reason not to do it at the police department, because when 22 years of very good experience walks out the door and you replace it with 0, we're only going backwards.
Do a dispatch has to be a sworn officer?
No, sir.
Okay, so I was just wondering why I would like to think that job would be having people standing in line.
Until they go in and observe and they say, this is way too much for me. It is a, again, multitask job with 12 hours of very little breaks, and if you're on a busy night or day, then it's all you can handle.
So I have a couple of comments and a couple of questions also. Chief Weems and I met last week, and what did we spend, 4.5 hours
It was a
together?
short meeting.
It was short. I had someone call me afterward, and they had called several times while we were meeting. They said, "What is taking you so long?" We were having fun. We were going around and touring the place. And I'll tell you, Mr. Bolden, I will not be applying for one of the jobs in dispatch. That is a world that I could not multitask in that way. So I really respect what they do, certainly what the police department in general does. I'll echo Mr. Bolden's comment that I think the police department does a great job.
Thank you, sir.
In general. This is a comment, not a question. I agree with you that we have to do better on retention. We must. When I talk to you in particular, and we're losing guys left and right just down the road, I don't see any reason for us to compete with Lufkin as a competitor. I think we should be working together with them so we don't have this leapfrog effect where we have guys that want to go to Lufkin instead of staying in Nacogdoches. There's nowhere else I would want to go, but if my family could be better set for the future, I would want to do that, especially if it was a 20-mile trip. You know, that's a kind of a no-brainer for me. So those guys that have been with the police department for 20 years, who have been told by either previous city administrations or previous councils, we're gonna take care of you, we're gonna make sure you get what you need, and then they keep hearing that and then it never happens, well then it makes it a lot easier for them to jump to another department. And I know that that's kind of what the summary of our conversation had been. And so I think we've got to do at least assignment pay, but I think we've got to become more competitive. And I appreciate what you do. I know that we cannot afford to lose more positions. I know I'm speaking what you said to me last week, and you're saying those same things here today, but We've got to have some kind of proposal so we can make that decision, but I want you to know, and I want the police department to know, that we've got to do what's right for our guys that have been here for a long time.
Thank you, sir.
Anything?
Yeah. So, I was surprised last year, I guess I'm gonna direct my comments to you, Mr. Canizares, because I was surprised last year when the police didn't didn't ask for more money for these evaluations, because it seemed like it was already starting to be a problem. And why did we not ask for more funds for the police back then? Because it sounds like we're bleeding people now, and particularly in the last 2 months, right? The last 2 months,
Yes, ma'am.
Well,
which
when-
I'm not surprised.
Sure. Well, when I first started in August 2020, we were already in the process of losing a number of officers.
Okay,
We met with previous police chief and at the time, Assistant Chief Weems, and certainly Assistant Chief Taravella, to go through a process of trying to identify how do we create a lateral transfer program. We started that program. We heavily recruited. We did do what we needed to do as far as bringing experienced officers. But at the same time, Lufkin went through their problems after we started making grounds on ours. And so they leapfrogged us. So we were actually making some positive steps last summer. We really were. But then through their budget process, they saw what we did and they upped their game. And so it literally is a leapfrog effect. And
Well-
so,
oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
so it literally is a leapfrog effect. So no matter what you do, and again, I'm not saying I'm all for providing our officers with better pay and more opportunities, either recruiting new or keeping existing. If we up our game this next budget cycle, I guarantee you that Lufkin will do the same next year, because we're all competing for the same talent. It is a zero-sum game when it comes to recruiting officers, because every agency across the state of Texas is doing exactly what we're talking about right now, is trying to find people to fill those ranks. And so we're fortunate that we're seeing folks from the Killeen area. We've had people come from, I believe,
Arizona.
Friendswood or Sugar Land area here just in the last year. So we've had people come. We've had people come from Fort Worth to come to be police officers, and they're experienced officers. And so we were already addressing those issues. But again, like I just told you, Lufkin advanced the ball, upped their game, and so now we're not getting the bites we used to get because they upped their game.
So-
One thing I do want to make a correction on is our starting officer makes $55,000 a year. I believe starting officer in Lufkin makes 50.
Well, we did the research on that, and actually, we're talking oranges and apples, because the starting officer here starts off on probationary pay, and that's compared to their probationary pay, and that's the one I was going by, so.
But, again, so we were making progress, but we've lost ground in the last 9 months. We just have.
So, could we not work with Lufkin where we work together to move up to a civil? I don't know if they would be willing to do that, but I know that sounds crazy, but, I mean, have we approached that conversation so we're keeping our region better where we're not competing for that same applicant pool?
We see it in the banking industry, the same thing. We'll raise ours, Austin Bank will raise theirs, Bancorp raises theirs, and it's just, and I'd say it's happened in the last 6 months. We've seen another round of this raising, and so we're always chasing each other, and I'm sure y'all face the same thing.
Oh, yeah, we're in the valley right now. We'd like to get back on the hill.
Yes, ma'am.
So there are a couple pieces of data, one piece of data I'd like to see, and that is these positions over the last, let's just say 4 years, every 6 months, how many we had, how many we lost, just a rough, because I'd like to see a pattern. So how many police officers we have, how many left and how many came in over the last, every 6 months. I think that would really be helpful to it. And I'd also like to see a real plan with measurable goals, objectives, and strategies for us to retain our police and actually be accountable every 3 months for them and report back. Because this was a problem, a starting problem last year. And then if we add on to it, the 18, how many pedestrian deaths do we have? 14 and maybe some pedestrian.
18 injuries, serious injuries.
and also the bicycle added in. So we've had a number of pedestrian deaths that, I mean, do you attribute that part, at least part of that, to not having traffic police? And, okay, so I'm not just leaping off into some, we're talking about people's lives. I mean, that we've lost lives over this. And I know it was a problem last year because I thought, well, where is that? There's nothing in here. And then I also think our evaluation, I know last year at this time we talked about having some kind of merit pay, and I haven't heard anything about it. And I did hear from some people saying that the merit evaluation does not need to be the same rate or schedule for all employees, that you all have got to have an entirely different.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that's been discussed, absolutely.
Well, I haven't heard it, so
Okay.
anyway, that's what I'm saying. If we have actual, an actual a plan that has goals, objectives, tasks, who's assigned to do it, and then you monitor back you bring us back the results, I think that would be helpful. I do want to tell you all, I really personally appreciate everything you do. I haven't ever gotten my ride around time, so you may have to set aside a little time, because I really would like to do that. And
Well,
I thought you already, you mean you spent 4.5 hours and you didn't even go on a drive? Oh, my goodness.
Couldn't fit it in the schedule.
Anything else?
I just had, let me see, merit. So anyway, I'm all for, I just wanted to say I am all for the what is it, the assignments, the pay on the assignments. I'm all for salary, assignment pay, I'm all for salary. We need our police force, and we need an experienced one. So thank you for everything you do. That's it.
Thank you.
and,
Fisher.
Go ahead.
If you wanted to
No,
comment on, okay, I'm gonna take this from you, or else Ms. Jan's gonna get mad at me. Is it just a money issue? Because I see in in your future goals, change the culture to encourage retention, and I feel like I remember maybe in the last year having a discussion, not just about pay increases, but about maybe there being some sort of like survey of within the department in terms of job satisfaction, independent, separate from pay.
And you are correct. We're changing the culture. The culture and the reputation has somehow got flipped to where our reputation is you don't want to work for the police department. You're working too many hours. Your supervisors are too hard on you. You're just a negative culture. And so in the last 2 command staff meetings, we made it very clear that if you're talking to the public and you're talking to a recruit or you're talking to any of the academies, that we're going to present a positive culture because things are changing. We've made changes according to that management study. Some of the changes are going to be a little slow to take effect because of the manpower. There's nothing we can do about morale when somebody has to come into work with their extra 2 days that they get off and only have 1 day with their family. That's something that will have to try to work itself out once we get more manpower. But what we're proposing is you put it out that we're going in a positive direction. We're forward thinking now, and whatever we were saying or doing in the past needs to be in the past. So that's what that is in reference to.
Okay, thank you.
So I know when we talked a year ago, you had told me that historically we've had problems with vacancies in the department, and it seemed like at one time it was maybe more critical than it is now.
What was the numbers back then?
I don't remember the exact numbers. This is probably the most critical, or roughly the same as it was about 4 or 5 years ago.
Right, it's probably about the same.
Yeah. Well, you're the professional on hiring these officers and what they need and all, so we need you to help us.
Okay,
We want to fix the problem. We want to get it back to where it should be, where staffing is adequate. Because we don't want to shift not filled.
Right, and so with what I said today, that's y'all working with us. We're gonna handle the internal problems. The financial problems are out of our control, but we're asking, these are the things that we know for a fact that are affecting us negatively. So that's kind of what we're
Yeah,
asking.
yeah, Pam and us, we'll handle the financial side, but you got to help us understand what it's going to take to attract that officer.
Okay.
And to retain that officer,
All right.
more importantly.
Right, and I think she's got it written down to where we can break it down in simple terms.
Yeah,
Mayor.
and one of the things, like major companies now, when they start losing valuable employees, they always do an exit interview.
Correct, we do
And that
too.
exit interview will tell you a lot more than a survey will.
Right,
Right, right.
and that's where we came up with the internal issues that we needed to
Yes.
address.
Yeah, okay.
And that's when we started addressing. So,
Mayor, Scott and I and Benita will work towards giving you a cost proposal on this. If you'll remember last year, we came to y'all with some prioritization on personnel costs, one of those being, you know, the increasing the pay on the bottom of, end of our pay
Right.
scale, new employees, new programs, for y'all to review and categorize and figure out what you want to adopt. So what we'll do is we're planning on doing the same thing this year. So we're gonna bring all of those proposals for the new items, the new programs, the new personnel. This will be one of those things. And so we will work towards, probably by the 19th, maybe August the 2nd, but hopefully by the 19th of July, we'll be able to present to you all of those supplemental requests, and this will be one of them. So we'll kind of quantify what we can look at as far as a retention, a recruitment, and we'll kind of categorize it, and you'll be able to pick and choose what you feel like you can work in with the other items that have to be considered, but we'll make sure that we can get that for you.
Great.
So let me clarify about the plan. So, you know, the goals, objectives, tasks, and the dollars attached. So, for example, if one plan is, you know, has to do with recruiting, if one plan has to do with having these assignment dollars, if one part of the plan, one part of the plan has to do with changing the evaluation schedule. So that plan, I think, is really, really important to be tied with that budget request. So, and then the other thing is when we have that, I would also like to see Lufkin's comparison right off the bat.
I'd like to see the whole group that you've got there.
Yeah,
Would
if
be-
you have
would be
more,
good.
yeah, that'd be
And,
helpful.
and again, we can provide those comparisons, but there are some major differences between how Lufkin operates. They're a civil service
That is
organization, so their step plan is prescribed by state law. Ours is not, because we're not a civil service. I mean, police and fire here is not civil service. They are that there, so that is prescribed in legislation. So there is gonna be always that difference, unless we're gonna act like one, but not be it.
Well, but I mean, there's others, it's like Jacksonville and Henderson and, that are real close, that would be easy for an officer to drive back, commute to, that, you know, they're gonna be our competition.
Absolutely, there's no doubt. I mean, we can definitely do that comparison. I mean, Chief Weems and I, certainly Assistant Chief Terravella, we work closely. I mean, the issues that he's described today, I mean, we've been talking about it for the last number of weeks, a couple of months, and so, I mean, there is new leadership. I think I have full confidence in Chief Weems and Chief Terravella to lead us into the future, and we absolutely will work together to bring you the proposals to try to right the ship.
I'd also like to include in those numbers whoever we're trying to poach from, you know? I want to
Who-
know
to
what we're trying to, like, for example, if we're trying to get people from Dallas. I mean, Dallas has problems, and that is part of who you look to.
Sure, cost of living's higher.
We look everywhere.
Right. So just a couple of places that you're thinking of, you know, just to see what we're doing. And I know pay isn't everything, you know, so, thank you. Thanks for all you do.
All right, well, thank y'all for being with us, and we'll move on to fire and rescue.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
You gotta get in line behind the chair.
I asked first.
Good afternoon, Keith Kiplinger, your fire chief. Mr. Walker just admonished me to land this plane somewhere between Judge Watt's presentation and Chief Weems' presentation. So I think my timing is going to be a little closer to Judge Watt's, hopefully. I am proud to say that we are completely and totally 100% fully staffed in your fire department. That's not a place that we've been much in the last 15 years. We generally have a few vacancies, but currently we are fully staffed, and that's a good place for us to be. I want to talk a little bit about budget and the increased costs that you're seeing in our budget. In the supply line, supplies and materials line, that increase is really reflective. 75% of that increase is reflected by increased fuel cost, which you probably have seen that in your own personal experience as well. The balance of that increase in supply cost is replacements of breathing air cylinders, defibrillators, turnout gear, foam, things that just have a shelf life or a reasonable life. And so there's a little bit of cost there that's traditionally not recurring annually, but every 2 or 3 years we sort of cycle through a period where we need to buy 15 air bottles or we need to buy 5 AEDs. The balance of the budget is pretty flat, relatively flat. And then for our supplemental package this year, we've requested funding to take care of some deferred station maintenance. The deferred station maintenance that we've asked for are for Fire Station 1 on North Street, Fire Station 3 on the South Loop, and then Fire Station 4, which is out by the high school. We've put off the deferred maintenance on the proposed merger of Station 2 and 5, which is in the proposal to merge those stations in the capital improvement program, so we've not included any deferred maintenance for those. That maintenance or addition of systems for those fire stations includes smoke control for vehicle exhaust in those stations to keep that smoke out of the living quarters, the areas where the firefighters exist. It's really limited to exterior walls, roofs, foundation problems, some storage issues, and some bay doors that just need to be replaced because they're quite old. And so that's what that $594,000 request is for. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
I guess I'll.
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I insist.
I was just gonna make a comment. I have the same respect for firemen as I do policemen. How do you have a full force in hand right now? How do you, I mean, I would look at a fireman if he was looking at pay, then he would be looking to go to a larger metro area for higher pay. But they're staying in Nacogdoches?
So there are a couple of things that play into the fire service that make us a little different than law enforcement. In the career fire service, we're the only paid fire department in our county. There's not a sheriff's office, and there's not constables and school police and the university. We're the only one of only 2 career departments in the entire 12-county DETCOG region, us and Lufkin, because the other towns are just frankly smaller. Our nearest paid departments are Henderson and then Kilgore. Carthage has a few paid firefighters. Center has a few paid firefighters. Crockett a few paid firefighters. And so we have a relatively large geographic area that we can draw from. We do have people that live in Nacogdoches that drive to Longview and work for the fire department there. We have people that live here and drive to Montgomery County and Harris County for jobs. We have some Tyler firefighters that live here as well. But we have a larger geographic area with which to draw from, and that benefits us largely. Additionally, we have a great crew of firefighters that seem to get along with one another for the most part. They're mad at the chief most often, but they get along with each other, and so there's a positive culture that's emanated. So we have a really good opportunity that our firefighters go talk to a group of people. They're generally happy working for the city. They're happy with the organization. This council has done a really good job of improving our mobile equipment, our fire apparatus, which was a big challenge for the last 15 years, but we're finally in a place that we really feel like we're in a positive place, because people want good tools to work with, they want good equipment to work with, and now we've provided, instead of giving our firefighters a ball peen hammer and saying put in a roof, we gave them a whole bunch of roofing hammers and said now put the roof on. And so they have the equipment that makes them, that increases that pride and ownership. So that's the best I guess I have.
Good point.
We do have challenges, and again, I'll echo what Chief Weems said about recruitment and retention are both important. Our recruiting, our pay is right in line with where it needs to be on a recruiting standpoint. But we do have a lot of institutional knowledge and a lot of firefighters that have been here a long period of time. I don't look for them to move and to go. They're not quite as portable as law enforcement because they're going to have to drive a lot further to get another job. But we do need to retain that knowledge base. A firefighter with a year on the job is worth about 30% of a firefighter with 10 years on the job. And it's a matter of having seen things and having experienced them and having learned that experiential knowledge that you only get by touching it, smelling it, seeing it, and feeling it, and actually being there. And so I'll take an old, worn-out, 25-year-old veteran over a rookie any day. Because that old, worn-out veteran may be slow, but he's going to be steady and he's going to get the job done, and he's probably not going to get hurt.
So you talked about getting all the right equipments to fix a roof. as it was an analogy, but I know we do have some station roofs that are in disrepair and there are some leaks. Is that addressed in the station maintenance, particularly Station 1, where we have a very new ladder truck?
Mm-hmm. And a wall that's about to fall down, and a foundation that's collapsing, and a door that won't close properly, and a roof that leaks. That's included in that. In fact, Station 1 is the bulk of that request at $449,000 of it is at Station 1. So there's about $100,000 for those other two stations just to replace storage buildings that are falling apart and do a few minor things. But Station 1 is in pretty bad shape. Ultimately, our plan or our goal that we've asked council to support is to replace that station, to rebuild a new station in that same vicinity, a little bit north of there. But that's going to be several years down the road, and we need to spend some money just to be able to continue living there, if we're going to continue living there more than a year or two.
Well, and I think that's one of the distinctions that needs to be made, is that the people that are working in that station live there when they're working there. It's not, you don't go home and, I mean, you're having your meals there. It's the entire time you're there. It's different than other roles in the city.
It is, and I think it's important to understand firefighters work an average of about 2,700 hours a year, where a normal city employee works 2,080 hours a year. So there's about 700 extra hours a year if they don't work any overtime, just in their schedule, because they work 24 hours on and 48 hours off. So that's about 121 or 122 days a year that they're at the fire station physically for 24 hours. And so every third Christmas they spend at the firehouse, every third New Year's Eve is at the firehouse, and every third Thanksgiving dinner is served at the fire station. So there is a distinction. So thank you for recognizing that.
And that's my point. If they're going to be living there, we want to make sure that we take care of those maintenance items, because it's their house. For a third of the year, it's their house.
And I did tell Chief Weems that my plan is to keep you for 5 hours tomorrow, Mr. Huckabee, because I have my time with you tomorrow. So hopefully we could spend some time in those stations, and I want you to really see what the things that we're proposing are with your own eyes. And I know that the balance of council has visited the stations and seen what we'll look at tomorrow. So
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Anyone? Yep.
Do you have a rough idea of the percentage breakdown between newer officers versus veteran versus, or what you consider veteran versus middle in our fire department?
If I had to guess, I would say that our average tenure is 13 years. It was 12 when we ran the numbers a couple of years ago. One of the advantages that we have is that we are able to recruit people that were firefighters other places. And so traditionally, out of the group of people that we hire over the last 15 years, and this was not by design, it's just by the nature, a third of our employees have a 4-year college degree and come from the university setting and then go get fire training. A third come from the military and did 2 or 3 tours in Afghanistan or Iraq. And a third come from another fire department or another 911 emergency medical service or something like that. And it's really broken down a third, and a third. We don't need all Marines necessarily, and we don't need all accounting majors necessarily. So it actually works out to be a really good blend. Excuse me, a really good blend. Okay. So probably 12 or 13 years is our average tenure, and we have several people with more than 30 years and several people with less than 3. So.
Okay. And then one more question. A few months ago, I can't remember the month now, but we heard a presentation from you on our big fire department master plan of relocating and rebuild new buildings. Is there any interplay between that and this, or are they wholly separate things?
So the interplay is that in our Tier 1 projects, we recommended merging Fire Station 2 and Station 5 into a new central station. Because of the timeline of moving Station 3 on the southwest side and Station 1 on the northwest side, because those were Tier 2s, they're pushed out further, which does play into that because we've got to patch
Right.
where we are in order to be able to maintain those stations another 3 to 5 years until we have the opportunity to rebuild them. So that does play in. So if we were able to do some of those other projects sooner, could we save some of this money on the front end? Yes, probably so. Some of this has to be done now. Some of it we could defer if we wanted to accelerate the timeline on those other projects. But right now, this is based on what we know.
Thank you.
Just as a clarification, this is the same $594,000 that was presented in the CIP as what we would be funding with cash general fund reserves. It's not an additional, so it is one of those pieces that we told you we would be bringing back to you during the budget process. This is that same piece. It's not an additional amount. It's what you saw when we were doing the CIP stuff.
Got it. Thank you. And thank you, Chief. We're lucky to have you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
So one of these questions is one that somebody has been asking me for a year now, so I'm going to forward it to you. Could we, especially now that the gas prices, when we go out on a call, you go out on calls that are not fires, correct? Is it cheaper, or can we do it without going out in a fire truck? Would it be that? I don't have any answer to that.
That's an excellent age-old question, and I'm gonna give you the bottom line first. In a department our size, it doesn't work. If we were the city of Plano and we had 75 firefighters on every day, it would work well in some situations. For us, it would mean buying 5 other vehicles to place at fire stations for response vehicles. And it would mean breaking up our crews or breaking up our companies. So the advantage to having a fire engine show up with the people on it and with all of its capabilities is they stay together and they have all the tools they need to respond to an all-hazard event. So years ago, I had a citizen tell me that they didn't understand why the firefighters were at Kroger. And I told the taxpayer that I've been to 3 CPRs at Kroger, but I've never been to one at Fire Station 1 on North Street. And so where they're located, as long as they have all of their equipment with them all the time, they can respond from one emergency to the next. They're able to deal with the situation when they get there. I can't tell you how many medical calls I've been on in the course of my career that turned out that there was a gas leak at the house at the same time. And so if we responded with an SUV just equipped to do medical calls, first of all, you wouldn't have all 3 firefighters together, most likely, because you'd still have to leave one with the fire truck, the fire engine. And then they wouldn't have been able to deal with turning off the water because there was a water line broken, or dealing with the gas leak, because they just wouldn't have all the tools and equipment. And so from a company cohesion standpoint, it makes sense to keep them all on one piece of apparatus. And then we buy fire trucks that are specifically designed to handle all of the hazards in our community. So when a regular pumper rolls out of the station, they have the equipment that's necessary to start working on a rescue off of a cell phone tower. They have rope harnesses and ropes. Now, they may need another truck to bring the balance of the equipment, but they can always get started with what's on each one of those fire engines. And so while there is some fuel savings, that fuel savings is really not significant. Our budget in the fire department is 90.28% personnel. Almost a little over 90% of our budget is people. And so having those people with their tools is what's essential. And so we have about 9.5% of our budget that's really not discretionary, but it's for buying fuel and supplies and tools and those things. That's about 9.5%. And there's about $20,000 or so a year that we can decide, do we want to buy chainsaw blades or do we want to buy circular saw blades? And so very little of our budget is discretionary, and as a percentage, very little of it is involved in the fuel. And so, does that answer your question?
Yeah, the
Okay.
first part answered.
Don't
it,
hold
but
one,
it
don't
kept-
hold on to it for a year next time.
Well, I just was, I wanted to watch, but.
Absolutely.
Okay, anybody else? All right, well, we will move on to facility services. Thank you, Chief.
I'm Keith Kiplinger, your building maintenance supervisor. Regrettably, we are short one maintenance custodian at this point, but we have that on the, we have that out in the job world, and we are, hopefully, we'll fill that in the next 2 weeks. We have some excellent applicants. It's incredible to me how many people have extensive experience cleaning that want to go to work for the city, and so, so we're excited about some of those applicants, and the interviews will start in the next week. That position is actually our roving custodian, the person that sort of moves site to site to help with special projects. So one day a week, they mop the floor in the gym in this building, and that's not a one-person job. That's a job that takes a lot of time and energy, and so this person's the one that cleans Lanana Hall and some of those off-site facilities, and so we're excited to get that person back up and running. The building maintenance department has very little changes fiscally from last year. The significant increases come in replacing carpet cleaning, shampooing thing, and some vacuum cleaners that are over 20 years old. And apparently, I didn't realize that vacuum cleaners cost $600, but apparently the ones that you use in a commercial setting every day costs a lot of money. So we do have some expense there that's built in that you'll find in the budget. And then we have a couple of exceptional items that we've requested. One is the replacement of a pickup with a maintenance truck that has a utility bed, so that our supervisor over building maintenance can carry all the tools and ladders and things, so that he, again, much like the fire truck, has all of his tools with him when he gets to a job site. And so that would be an addition. And then we also are requesting a part-time custodian, no more than 20 hours a week. And that person would really fill in during vacations and holidays and sick days, and then help out with special projects, like when it's time to buff and polish the floors. That would be a person that we could utilize in that role. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I think there's an addition, I just saw it, problem on the proposed budget page, because that budget should actually go down, shouldn't it, between 21-22 and 22-23? That, see, at 337-277 at the bottom is the same as the number on top. So I don't think it's adding that column, but I think the 370 is actually gonna be less than what the budget was for 21-22.
Yeah.
You got it?
Yes, it is, the personnel services, yes, that total down there is not correct, I'm sorry. That is on me. But the personnel services did drop, and that is.
But I was just talking about the overall budget for the
Right,
department
overall, yeah,
is gonna be
it's a lot
down.
closer because
Yeah.
I do have a problem on that total page. I told y'all.
No, but it's good, but that might allow us a little bit for these supplemental items.
Yeah, but yeah, their personnel services did go down as tenured people have left, and we have replaced some of those positions at entry level over the year, from last year to this year. We have some of those folks have left, and their longevity pay has gone away, and so, that's why the personnel's gone down, but yes, that total column is incomplete. I will update that for you.
Good deal.
Thanks for
Anybody else?
taking that one, Pam.
Yeah, I was just going to ask the chief, you're asking for the maintenance truck with the utility bed. How are they getting the equipment out to the job sites now?
So we have one truck that has a utility bed. So we have two full-time maintenance people that do the facility maintenance, that work on air conditioners, that were in my building trying to figure out why the power was out yesterday afternoon. And so one of those does have a truck with a utility bed. The other just has a regular pickup that we just determined over the course of 2 or 3 years that that's just not an effective way. Right now, if they tackle a project like that, they kind of either both get together or they go back to the shop and load up the equipment they need, drive out to the city facility, fix something, and then drive back to their warehouse.
Thank you.
So it's just really an efficiency item.
Anybody else, any other questions? Okay, thank you,
So Kerry
Facility
Walker, I was
Services
successful.
Director. Yeah, and we're gonna take about a 5-minute break, if that's okay.
So we'll start with the easy ones first. Engineering. So we are fortunately fully staffed in engineering. We have 3 engineers. One is EIT project engineer, Sam. We share an office assistant with planning, and then we have a GIS department. So I'm proud to say that we're fully staffed as of today. So our budget didn't change very much at all. Went up a little bit, primarily due to some increases in our software licenses. We handle a lot of different types of software. Those license costs have gone up in a few cases. Also, general increase for office supplies and equipment. So, and these, of course, are estimates, so hopefully we'll come under that a little bit. But mostly that. The only other thing we added, and it's small dollars, is a couple of thousand to what we call consulting services, and we keep kind of a little budget for unknown consulting things. So we may get a project where we need to go do a quick environmental study, and we'll keep this kind of budget to be able to do that for things that we don't know. Generally, all the big capital projects have their own budget for professional services, but occasionally we'll get a small one. So, so no major changes, just basic increases. So, is there any questions on engineering?
That was quick. Anybody have anything?
I do have questions.
Okay, go ahead.
As you know, I am, what, you're so fast. All right, hold on. I am really concerned about that backflow valve thing. Is that,
Okay.
this is on this one, this engineering one, right?
Well,
So I
the
have it
backflow
written?
preventers, is part of our water
Oh.
utility guys.
Okay,
But
so-
you can certainly ask questions now if you want, but the
No, no,
cost for
get it.
all that's
Okay.
in water utility.
That's, I'll pick it up there.
Okay,
Thank you.
any other questions?
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Lack of staff, CIP capital improvement plan. Does that mean you're going to request for additional staff?
Yes, sir. So, once we.
Is that part of your budget, I guess I should ask? Is that part of the budget?
So it is, we are not targeting that this year,
Okay,
not targeting that.
Okay.
So we handle $2 million, $3 million a year worth of construction projects internally with our staff. And remember, we're project managers. We don't do much in the way of design. Your street paving projects are probably the only thing we completely do in-house. Occasional small designs, but mostly it's outsourced. So we manage consultants and we manage projects. When we go from $3 million a year, $2 to $3 million a year to $30 million, we're gonna have to have some management and administration help. So that can either be done with FTEs, or it can be done through consultants and general contracts that literally replace those FTEs in our office for the duration of the project. So what we're gonna look at doing, and remember, those costs, if we outsource it, come out of the project, so not out of our operations budget. So what you're gonna see as part of the CIP budget, Mr. Bolden, might include some administrative costs to help us manage the CIP.
okay.
Did that
Thank you.
answer your question?
Yes, sir.
And I heard a O. Do you have something, Ms. Miller?
No, I think it's later.
Okay,
later on.
good. Anybody? Good, okay. Let's move on to building inspections.
Inspection services. So inspections was, up until here recently, was combined with code enforcement. So they were split apart, and Ms. Helton has taken code enforcement, and I've taken inspections, and so this is kind of an odd year from the budget standpoint. What was combined now is being split, so we're kind of, your comparables for the year prior may be a little bit weird looking, but in general, we think we've got it all worked out. We do have one vacancy right now for building official that we are trying to seek solutions for that, and do have a pile of applications right now for building
This,
inspectors.
for David's
Yes,
job?
correct. So we are moving forward on that, and I am confident now that we've got some folks to look at, so I'm hoping we can fill that within the next few months. And it does take 2 building officials to keep up with our general permit levels and keep things inspected, especially when you've got somebody in and out for vacation or sick. You've really gotta have two folks in there to operate efficiently. So, our proposed budget is actually slightly lower, and again, I told you there were some little hinky things when we split everything out, how we split those services. So effectively, the budget's level from prior year, and when we have no major things. We have a few increases because we have, literally we'll have, if we hire a new one, 3 new people. Our permit technician is recent, our other building inspector's relatively recent, and so we're buying a few new things in the way of uniforms and code books and things that they didn't have on the bookshelf. So we had a few dollars appropriated towards new personnel, just like police chief said. There's some initial investments, but generally speaking, the budget's flat and level. That was it. Any questions on inspections?
Okay, we'll move ahead to Public Works.
All right, come on here in the right area. Okay, so Public Works has several department groups, and so we'll kind of address those. They're all here in one presentation, but we'll look at them. So Public Works Administration was kind of set up, I think Pam, you kind of helped crafted that several years ago. We have really one person paid under Public Works Administration. Street Department has 14 folks. We have 2 vacancies right now, and then our Fleet Maintenance has 4 folks. So let's talk about the vehicle maintenance first, their proposed budget. Let me get over there, folks, sorry. Get to the right sheet. Lots of sheets in this one, I apologize. Okay, so the budget for vehicle maintenance has some slight increases. This is primarily from fuel and a little bit of equipment we want to buy, so a brand new jack system, 1-inch impact drivers, some, periodically we've got some minor equipment we buy, and then of course it has a many-year duration for that equipment. But basically the budget is seeing some small increases. This is again mostly related to fuel and a little bit of equipment, and some health insurance cost, of course, for the employees. So, any questions on that?
I have a question on roads.
I'm sorry?
Roads, or since not on the
We are fixing to be there in a second.
All right.
On streets?
streets.
Okay,
right,
yeah.
Streets.
We're not quite there.
Okay,
So this is Public Works Administration, this is personnel, which is, I guess, Carrie, is that right?
Yes, yes.
So we keep him in a little cage by himself, and so, this just had to do with the way we appropriate dollars from sanitation fund and the general fund and the streets, and so it's some accounting help. So you can see that, budget has not changed, actually gone down just a little bit as we tweak some of their supplies and cost numbers, especially for contractual. Streets, so the street budget has gone up. Let me get over to that page where I've got my detail. Okay. So the street budget, again, has increases, and you can see in personnel cost, which reflects mostly insurance changes, and I think one small personnel upgrade that we did during the year is being reflected in a future budget. But primarily, we have large increases in fuel, as you would expect, and like I say, one salary adjustment that we made, and that's primarily where most of that change comes from. So it's again mostly fuel-based changes in streets.
ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we have the $5 a month charge for streets. And how much does that run, and how much of this budget does it take in, and what
Okay.
happens with that?
So the $5, and that's for residential, $250 for apartment, and then $15 for commercial. I said that right, I think.
I think 750 and 15.
750 and 15, thank you. And so that equilibrates to approximately $750,000 a year. Can be a little bit less, a little more, depending on the number of accounts we have active. That $750,000 is put into a special account, for lack of a better description, that is designated only and specifically for street maintenance. The ordinance that was passed that created this identified what could be done and what could not be done with that money very, very specifically. but effectively it is for maintaining streets. So that money is about $750,000. So when we do street projects, we have either separate bids that use that, or we delineate in a bid, these things are coming out of the street maintenance fund, and these things are coming out of our operations and maintenance budget, or sometimes our CIP. So we have $250,000 in the CIP that goes towards paving. We have $250,000 in the streets operations budget that goes towards paving. And then we have about $750,000. So as much as 1.2-ish million available annually.
So is that
For this one, it's the 250,000 operations that he's
Correct.
referencing. That's what's included in that contractual service, not contractual service, the maintenance, that 294, 250 of that is specifically for streets.
Yeah.
Right, but
Rehab.
the roughly 750,000 that
That
we're
is in
taking
a-
from that fee, that is not
That is
shown here.
not, yes, that is a whole separate fund.
That's over and
Yes,
above.
yes,
So we're
yes.
running all this plus another
Yes.
750,000.
Yes, ma'am.
That's
Yes,
really what I wanted to know. Thank
And
you.
you said 250 comes here, and then the other 250 comes from what?
In the general fund CIP.
Okay,
And so
gotcha.
the way that the ordinance was set up, in order to create that $750,000 fee, we cannot, by ordinance, reduce this 250,000 in the maintenance operations or the 250,000 in CIP.
We
What
used to
did
just
not
put-
want to do was
We used to just put
supplant.
500,000 to it a year, before we put the $5 fee on the water bills.
That's generally correct.
Yeah,
We had
probably.
a series of years where
Yeah,
we put none.
couldn't, yes.
So, but
yes.
yes, our target was 250 plus 250, effectively, yes, in the past. And so we've gone from that to 1.2 million, 1.2 million, so.
Good, that's good to know.
It has. And, you know, we don't throw $1 at a time at streets, we throw it in projects, so sometimes you'll see us, and you're fixing to receive an updated street report. Mr. Opperman has just finished that up, so we're looking at the final draft, and we'll send that out to you. It'll show you what we did in the past year, what we're gonna do in the next year, and how those monies were spent, and what came out of street fund. And it's a short report, and those of you that have been on council have seen it before, but it kinda shows you where we've been and where we're going, and I think it'll kinda bring you up to speed. Last year, we had a shortage in materials. You'll see that in the report. We couldn't get the rock to shoot seal coat, and so we suspended some projects. Those are being bid now, or Case, I think you've already bid them, maybe? Yeah, they're currently bidding what we suspended last year. So we're hoping to get materials, so we just moved it forward, but the dollars are all there. The one good thing here is we don't lose these dollars, so.
So I think it'd be very helpful if, in that report, if you could, if it's possible, to show what these special projects were that were done with the 750,000.
It is absolutely delineated.
Okay,
It is.
good, okay.
It is. And we're actually required, by the way that ordinance was written, and that
Okay.
policy was developed through the city manager, to delineate that for you, so you can see,
Okay,
your
good.
750 went to this, and by the way, not to this.
Okay.
And I won't beat this up, but for example, we can't go build a new roadway with
Right.
that 3/4. It's all gotta go to maintenance, and we show you that that's what we've done. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so some changes in personnel. So, as you guys have heard, staff is a challenge. And for us, staff with CDL licenses is a challenge. They're very, very, very competitive right now in the market, and anybody who has a CDL can find a job or two or three. And so we are taking on the approach and beginning a program. Mr. Walker has developed our ability to start training in-house for that. We're gonna train some trainers first, and we're gonna fund in-house training, which will allow us to grow our own CDL drivers. That will allow us to take staff that currently don't have CDLs and bring them through that process. As of January, February, I think, Carrie, this year, the law changed, and now to get your CDL, you have to actually go attend driving school. Whereas before, you could kind of go, get taught, take a test, and similar to the way we all got our licenses, just a little more complicated. Now you actually have to attend a process that's multi-week, which would take folks out of operations for us. And to make short summary, we're gonna grow our own and hopefully do that. So what we would like to do is have a $50 per pay period stipend for employees who achieve the CDL, and even employees who have it. It would reward them and hold them. And so that's a proposal to you in this next budget. And I think that will get us at least a little closer to what the industry's doing, because they'll snatch these folks just for that license.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
For some reason, I wrote a note down, it says, proposed personnel changes, CDL driving license stipend will not retain an employee. And when I looked at that, I looked at $50 a pay period. That is not very much as far as competition with other companies to require CDL.
I don't argue. What does it take to retain them, Councilman? It's a good question. So,
It would be a lot more than $50 a pay period, because they make that up in a day. I mean, you know, if they're doing cross-country.
yeah, with the CDL driver.
Yeah.
There are CDL drivers that make six figures easy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's probably gonna be difficult for us to compete with that level of driver, so we're certainly open. I think we were trying to find something to incentivize these folks, cause it's not fair to ask them to go through this process and not have some kind of stipend that rewards them. So we would certainly be open to additional and higher amounts.
I think the other comparison too is the ones that Mr. Bartlett's mentioning, the six figures. I mean, a lot of it is cross-country driving. And
Right,
so
yeah.
what the trade-off is being away from home, on the road all the time versus, I mean, so it's trying to find that balance. So I mean, if it needs to be more, we can sort of look at that. But
Well, council, we'd sure be open to other numbers if you wanna visit with us about it.
But whatever we do, I hope we track it. So for example, if we do help reward them to get their license, and then we find out, oh, now that they're licensed, people poach them more, I mean, on anything else. So that's what I'm saying.
and they will.
Right, so, you know, but as long as we track it and we report it back and we have our, you know, our goals, objectives, our tasks, and the cost.
Well, and
attached to it.
those things we do, I mean, because we don't have that many CDL drivers.
Right,
So when
right.
we lose them, we feel it immediately. And
Right,
so
right.
it's always trying to recoup. And really, it's, again, Mr. Bartlett and I have talked about just because of the labor market and the difficulties in attracting, you know, some talent to our area, is trying to grow our own. And so how do we not necessarily create programs, but really incentivize our employees, whether it's providing the time, the materials to do the studying and do the training or do the testing. Keeping a CDL it's a, first of all, it's a golden ticket for many folks, but just maintaining that licensing is a challenge. I mean, they've got to have a very squeaky clean driving record.
And
so
health record is vitally important.
Absolutely. So again, it's really about trying to grow our own and actually encourage our folks that don't have it to try to get it with that care.
Is there not a waiver for if you are training within house, as far as, if you're not going to be out of the city limits or out of the county?
Kinda like a driver and training deal. I don't know, Mr. Walker? You leaving?
No, I'm here. I'm sorry, I couldn't fully hear that question.
Are there any kind of provisions for local CDL drivers as they're learning or training or anything that would give us early?
After we give them the CDL, is that what?
Well, or while they're in progress, I
Yeah,
think.
in progress, and, yeah.
Or is it get a CDL or don't drive?
So, if I understand your question right, for instance, in street department, our laborers are the only ones that don't have CDL. To advance, they have to get a CDL. Once you obtain that CDL, some of our guys, I won't say kids because they're young, I'm old, but, they can't go over the road. They can only stay interstate, which is in
Yeah.
Texas. And you have to reach a certain age to actually go cross-country with it. So there's a few restrictions. I hope I'm answering your question right.
Well, you know, there's like when you apply for, well, when you're going through the training, you have, like chemical, that part of it. I mean, are we going to require them to do chemical training?
So there is, there's the basic CDL, there's a B, and then there's an A, which is more like a truck and trailer. And then there's these, additional licenses you can get on that. There's 5 or 6 of them. There's a
okay.
tanker endorsement,
Right.
there's air brakes,
Oh.
hazmat, and all these other things. We require just the air brakes. If you're gonna get an A, you'll have what's called a double and a triple that lets you pull the trailer. We typically don't require hazmat. We really don't want you to pull anything that's
Yeah,
hazmat.
right.
But the basics for utilities, they have to have a tanker endorsement because some of their trucks have big water tanks on them. And requires that, that type of license or it's just kind of an add-on to it. Those can be obtained at the same time, and we're trying to encourage everybody as they get them to get the additional licenses that goes with that. So that, because it's the same money basically when you're getting it. With this new requirement that came in February the 7th, as Mr. Bartley was saying, you could, prior to that, you could just go to DPS, get the book, study, take the test, and all that. So now it's a federal law and a federal class that has to be taken. And for somebody to go get a CDL now, before they can even apply for DPS, they've got to go to this class. This class, for instance, Angelina charges $3,300 for one class.
Yeah, we found that out.
Yeah, so it's very
At the church,
expensive, and,
yeah.
and people starting out in their career can't afford to just go do that. So it made better sense for us to train these two instructors through a company that's actually going to come here, teach our instructors, set up our classroom, set up a driving course, set up our road course. And all of this has to meet federal requirements, and these curriculum that they've got designed meets all that criteria. So it's going to be, in the long run, it's going to be a lot cheaper because we have probably a dozen people ready to go.
Oh, wow.
That need a CDL. Because in the event of a disaster, we need everybody to drive.
And this is not just for public works, so this would be training for across the city, and we've even talked about extending that outside the city as openings. So we're gonna explore other entities to be able to attend this training.
That would be my question. As a holder of a Class B CDL, prior to the new federal law, even that was a complicated process. The pre-trip inspection that you have to do, I failed it the first time. I'm saying it out loud to everyone, so you know that I did. It's complicated, and now that this new requirement has been put in place, I mean, doing it in-house is going to be beneficial, not just for the city, but if we could offer it to our local school districts, because every school district in the county, I promise you, is hurting for school bus drivers. That's why I have a Class B CDL, is because I have to jump on a bus route fairly often, and so I think that's great what y'all are doing.
Yeah. And we haven't fully explored how that would work yet. We thought we'd get the program started.
For sure.
Like Kerry said, we've got a pile of them across the city to put through this program. And I want to emphasize one thing he said a while ago. This is targeted primarily, what you'll see is our entry-level employees, labor class or whatever. This is a way for them to get something that moves them up, and that's what we're trying to do. I think that helps in retention. You know, we're talking about retention. But this would be, they move up into operator conditions or other things that give them pay increases on top of that stipend and help us keep a long-term employee. So we're excited about it.
Yeah, we purchased a 55-passenger bus at church, so I'll go get the paperwork, et cetera, and I'm going to get a CDL. Paperwork's still sitting at the house.
We can hire you too. I mean, you'll have to.
Do you still have to go to DPS to test?
Yes.
And that's not in Nacogdoches anymore, right?
Well, you can actually do it there.
Oh, you can?
You have to take the driving test, you have to schedule that. You have to pass 3 or 4 written tests here, and then you have to schedule a driving test. And you need to go to Kildare or Lufkin, and there's a roaming instructor that would actually come and do one, and we meet them at the high school to do our actual driving
good.
test. The failure rate for the pre-trip is 80%, so don't feel bad, that's the way that works. So you go take it once to fail it and figure out what you need to do to go pass it the next time, but there's an 80% failure rate on that. And you can't go to DPS until you've had this new, they call it entry-level driver training class, which is a 2-week, $3,300 class. Once you take that, you go to DPS, they look on the Federal Motor Carrier's website to see that there's a licensed instructor that gave you that class to let you start the next phase of this thing. So it's a 4 to 6 month process to get a license nowadays. It's a very difficult one. I've had mine since 1982. I took it in a 2-ton truck and I can drive a semi. Now you've got to go through 6 months of training. It's really progressive, and it's very, I'm not saying it's not a safety matter that doesn't need to be addressed, but at the same time, it's very difficult and it's a hard process, especially young in your career and the kind of money you gotta put forth just to get that license.
Yeah, we had a couple of guys at church, but they failed the health part of it.
Yeah.
And my understanding, you have to update that every year?
So if you want to drive commercially like a semi, you have to have a health card, you have to have a yearly physical. People like me, if I'm just gonna work for a city, don't wanna work somewhere else, as a second job, you can get a government exemption, which keeps you from having to go get that health card. I can't drive for profit, but I can drive for personal and city equipment. It's what I normally do, because I don't wanna go through all that other hoops, and, you know, you hear these guys having to take these, keep records of how many hours, and there's GPSs on the truck that sees how many hours the motor's running, so that allows you not to do that, so. But over the road, you're exactly right. I hope I answered y'all's
You did.
questions.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Gary, appreciate it. So, their capital expense budget, and these are in the, I think, the order of priority. So, crash bollards for downtown, and you've seen we've already done the first phase of that. You saw it for Blueberry Festival, kind of a neat deal. So it looks much better. I saw a lot of people walking in between those bollards freely, and we think it's a great way as opposed to our gates. The next phase will be around the downtown square, kind of if you can think along the diagonal crosswalks, kind of that's our margin. And we'll be installing those carefully in the brick streets. They come out, come in. It's a neat setup. So we're pleased that that's some added security for our downtown festivals. We need to replace our message board, you know, the big flashing signs. We have two, I think, is that right, Carrie? I think.
Yes.
Two of them. One of them's dying out, and it's time to replace one of them. We're looking at some security upgrades at Public Works, which would be a gate with security. We don't have that now, and a key card touchpad. So we'll be talking more about security in the future, I think, with everybody, and this is one step that Carrie would like to implement very, very quickly out of Public Works, and is pretty reasonably priced security upgrade. Something that we've talked about every single budget cycle since I've been around the city, even as a part-timer with you, a contract person, is a bucket truck. Years ago, we had a bucket truck, and it primarily belonged to our city electrician. We don't have a city electrician, and we don't have a bucket truck. So when we need bucket truck help, we hire an electrician. You generally come out and help us, and you can't rent a bucket truck here. There's just not a proximity. So from hanging festival banners to putting out police cameras to just fixing stuff up high, for maintenance to replace streetlights. So across a lot of departments, from parks to all the way to Public Works, a bucket truck is something essential, and we just don't have a good way to do this. So we're outsourcing that cost literally to firms who do other things that happen to have a bucket truck. So it's something we've asked for consideration of about $150,000, and that would be shared by multiple departments. Public Works would be the primary caretaker of it, but we would be able to facilitate and give it to parks or whatever. So just so you know, I think that's something that's just been on our agenda for quite a while. The automated crosswalks, if you've seen in downtown, close to where Mr. Mize lives now, did some trial flashing pedestrians, but they flash on demand, and we'd like to expand that. And so that is money for additional automated crosswalks.
Those work really well.
Pardon?
They work really
They
well.
do. If you push the button. I didn't see somebody that lives over there not pushing one. Never mind.
I try not to push it because I don't want to offend the driver. I want to kind of just slip across. Oh, well, I'll start pushing the button.
He keeps reporting on you.
So as you know, we talk frequently about complaints for traffic and speed humps and speeding and all these things. And so we are constantly have units out measuring speeds, they give us traffic data. And we use that to evaluate street problems. We're doing that right now on several streets. This is just additional equipment. We literally get so many requests that we're behind. And so we'd like to be able to deploy some more units at one time and not have a multi-week wait in order to start collecting data. We have an old 1996 model fleet service truck. So we have done our best to keep that old baby going, and it's time for a new one. Fleet service truck is much like PD was talking about and Fire had. They're outfitted to be able to go around and deal with the fleet remotely. So realize we have a lot of big boy toys as well as regular vehicles, and so we drive out to the landfill to work on stuff. We drive out to Public Works to work on those big vehicles. We don't drive them to fleet maintenance. So these go out in the field, out in the dirt, and they're able to do a number of things. So they're outfitted trucks for maintenance. And then the last thing is a backhoe thumb attachment, which is really a lot of fun. But this would be a great help when we're cleaning out creeks and streams, and the list would just go on. And I've joked with Carrie at home, I bought a grapple for my tractor years ago, and I don't know why I didn't do it 10 years before that. It is a great tool to have, and we're laughing, but this is that kind of tool that once you have it, we'll be able to reach down and pull logs out of the creek that jam up at bridges, and the list would just go on, I suspect. So I think this is a very worthwhile tool for a little expense that will go on to our backup. So, are there any questions about the capital expenses?
So you've got a sinking fund that'll pay for this, like on your dozers and stuff? No.
She said it quietly for me, though, and I appreciate it.
And what does it get? Capital expense general fund. So,
This would be, these capital items would be reserves.
Well, council, realize the purpose of this is for us to present you our prioritized list of needs. And it doesn't mean we fund all of them. I mean, I joked with you about the bucket truck, and we've lost that before, we may lose it again. But we want to communicate with you what we think are things that help us do our job better, more efficiently, or things that truly are needs for us. So that's what the point of this meeting is. But Pam just won't, tell me how to find it.
okay, any questions?
So, while we are on streets, Ms. Ballinger had a question, which I guess would be appropriate for this one, is drainage.
Yeah, thank you.
So, you want to elaborate on that? Yeah.
So a year ago, I was told about two very, very serious drainage issues in two of the neighborhoods, one in Kenbrook and one on Colonial Hills. And so I actually, when I started this process, I thought, what are some of my huge concerns? And does this budget reflect addressing them? And so I would like to see our budget or whatever. This was a year ago and nothing's been done on, well, something has been done on one of them a little bit, but I think we need to address the drainage in Kenbrook. And I mean, we're losing homes, people's property, and I have not seen a plan. I've seen, maps and things. Oh, now we'll do this, and now we'll do this, and now we'll do this. Well, we've done nothing, and that has got to be part of this.
So is that in addition to the CIP that needs to be approved by council?
I don't know where you're gonna put it. I mean, I'm just saying.
But that's the answer. It's you
No,
all.
I don't think it's capital improvements. I think this is.
Absolutely it is.
No,
It's
I mean, I think it's part of our regular, first of all, there are a couple of issues with it. One is why are we allowing people to build when we know they're gonna, when we know they're gonna overflow into neighborhoods? So whatever it is.
Who's building?
Well, changes are made in school districts, changes were made up over by Colonial Hills that impacts it. So we need a plan to address it, and we need dollars attached
Is
to
the
it.
Colonial Hills the issue related to that business that got postponed?
Right. But that's been a year, and so, and is it partly ours, what we give?
Well, I think that the drainage issues on Kenbrook are definitely ours, because that's part of a project that's embedded in the $5 million that's being requested as part of the CIP that we presented to you last November, that we reiterated in April, and that we were bringing for you on July 19th to either do it or not do it. I mean, at the end of the day, you all make the decision if we want to do this project or not, or these projects, because it's drainage, it's streets, it's parks improvements, it's facility improvements. And if we don't have the capital dollars to do it, I don't know where.
So basically, it's not as big a priority to be included in our budget, so it's kind of bumped to capital?
I disagree, Councilmember. I think it's a
Okay.
huge priority, because again, we brought these issues to the council last November. An entirety of projects, and we narrowed it down to those top priorities. And those drainage projects there's many drainage projects, but those two that you're speaking of are absolutely priorities, because they're embedded in that $5 million that we're proposing. So we need a funding source. If we don't have the funding source, I don't know how to get the monies.
So we actually have budgets here. It's not included in our this year's budget. So I think it's a higher.
Let me answer, because I think part of this is definition. So
Okay.
these budgets, and this will include your water utilities, water sewer stuff in a minute, are for maintenance and operations. So we make small repairs to broken pipes. but we don't add new sewer lines in this budget. This budget does not include that. We fix storm drains that are broken in inlets and do small projects, but we don't add new storm drain projects in this budget. So both of those are CIP. So if we're laying new pipe, new projects, that'll always be CIP, whether it's water, sewer, or storm drainage. So that's where Mr. Canizares is saying we've got $5 million requested to you, and we've got $1 million in reoccurring annually, and a one-time $5 million to catch me up, because we've got about 10 projects designed, like Summer Hill and some other ones we've talked
Right.
about, and including the ones you're talking about in Kenbrook that we would include in that. So I think the definition is fixing and maintaining
Okay.
versus new construction, and I think the
So
answer
you're
is
saying
yes.
it's-
We have funding that we've asked you for that.
Okay, so you're saying it's new construction? and
Yes, ma'am.
So that's,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
and it's not fixing it or maintaining it? Okay,
So,
that answers it.
I
Thank
mean,
you.
this week, last month, Mr. Walker's crews have gone out and fixed storm drains. They have literally fixed
Right.
storm drains.
Right.
But if we had to tear one out or line it or do something, it would move over into the CIP.
So in the Colonial Hills issue, we're saying we're not going, I just haven't seen the plan. I just have seen any plan. So we're not fixing anything over there? It'll just, we would have to construct a new line or whatever if we do
I'm sorry,
anything?
remind me which project.
Colonial Hills, that's where the drainage is coming from one business into the homes. You've seen it. They
Applebee Sands in Austin.
Oh, the plant shed?
yeah.
Yeah. So that particular issue has been a private property owner issue that we are helping manage and move forward. But right now, the expectation is that the business will make modifications that will mitigate part of that issue,
And the
Based on an
city-
engineering design.
based on an engineering design.
But is the city any part of that? I mean, do we need to build something in there also? Because I understand that may not take care of all of it, or, anyway, I don't want to get sidetracked, but I do want to plan to see,
Well,
to
we-
make sure.
Councilwoman,
that
we
this
would
is
like
done.
very much to spend $1 million a year working on our storm drains after a $5 million boost to catch up. And so, whether it's that project or others, we need to start spending money on storm drains, is what we've told you. So we agree with you, and I think we'll have to prioritize projects. $1 million goes quick, but, yes, I think it's important, and we haven't done it in the past because we really haven't had a funding purse directed towards storm drains.
Okay, well, I'm just putting it back on, higher up because people's homes are destroyed. That's a different, it's kind of like, when we have 18 people who are killed, that's higher up for me than.
So what we'll see, not to belabor all this, but what we'll see is annually, you and I and the rest of you will come up with some target problem areas.
Right.
And we'll say, hey, this is a problem, and we'll shake them all down and say, we're gonna do these projects this year. What you haven't seen us do is have that list of projects in the past.
Okay,
We've actually funded the design of them because I wanted to get ahead of all this, and so I have them almost complete. But each year, I think we'll go through and assess what we need to do, and I'll spend $1 million or $2 million or whatever is addressed. But it will be under the guise of the CIP, but it will be, like, so we've asked for at least $1 million to do that.
Okay, and part of that, as my understanding, is not building something new, but it's correcting something. I
In other words,
mean,
where's the line
on
between
Kenbrook-
maintenance and new construction?
right.
I'm gonna answer it in a dollar value sense, which is $25,000.
Okay. All right. So, good. I'm glad we're gonna have a plan. And I'm glad, hope it will be funded, at least this piece where people lose their homes.
So the final budget, by the way, for all this, is about a $32,000 increase, which we've had adds and deducts, understand when I say that, but generally we're about $32,000 higher in this category, mostly from fuel and salary adjustments, when it all nets out. So I think we've done a good job. Mr. Walker's done a good job of trying to balance all this, the new needs with it. So, are there any other questions for the Public Works?
I have one more. It's just
Okay.
a kind of general question. So when we heard from Chief Weems earlier, we had the proposed budget up on the screen, but then he said that the major personnel, that the issues that they're seeing wasn't addressed in that screen. I saw in this presentation, or it said something about similarly having difficulty with, competitive pay to retain quality employees. Are these issues that the Public Works Department is facing baked into the proposed budget? Like, can I assume that those issues are being addressed in this budget, or is that gonna require extra monies, like in the police department presentation?
So no, there, other than the stipends we've talked about, other than like the CDL stipends, and things, they are not baked in the budget. And one reason for that is, this is not just in the public works realm, so if we decide we need to raise operators from $18 an hour to $21 an hour, then that broadcasts over multiple departments. So it's a pretty global change, because we have operators in parks, and we have operators in water utilities, similar things. So no, it isn't baked in here to try to retain them. I think that's almost a citywide discussion.
Okay, because, then maybe we need to have that discussion, because it feels like part of these department presentations, this is just a general comment, are pinpointing real issues that we have that affect service, but then the proposed budgets that we're getting are just maintaining the same level that we have. And so the solution isn't here.
Correct.
Right? And so it would be helpful to see, just like we asked from the police department. I mean, all of this other stuff is important too. Right. And so just like we asked from the police department, well, what is not being covered by your proposed budget here that you think are real issues that need to be addressed, and how do we address those?
And what we're really talking about is yet another salary survey to see how we are competitively, how we are. And so, I mean, that's
It's just a money issue.
Yes, I don't, right now, we don't have any really other complaints about work environment or things like that. I mean, I think those are generally good exit interviews when they exit. But I think right now, some of them can be employed in a similar job for a higher rate of pay. Now, benefits and all that are sometimes misunderstood amongst some of the workforce. So we try to coach that. But no, I would say we are not at the top of the pay scale of our area. We have folks that work, you can check at Walmart and make more. You can get a starting bonus at Pilgrims. And now, it's not the same job, but my point is that's the metric.
Right.
And so how do we fix that? I think it's a citywide question.
Okay.
And I think one thing is keep in mind, we are starting this a lot earlier this year, and so we are not to the point where we are ready to bring to you all of those calculated amounts. That is what I was referencing earlier. What we will do when we give you the list of all the new programs, the new employees, the raises, those types of things will be prioritized, and that's what we will go through with some of these processes, and then we'll make it in before we give you the draft budget. Even after we give you the draft budget in August, you can still go back and say, hey, this was a priority too, but I want to institute this, assignment pay for police now because we didn't prioritize it one last month. You're gonna see all of that. This is just very early in the process. And so you will get all of this, you will get it all quantified so that you can pick and choose what you can afford to add to the budget with increases in revenue. And it'll work the same way. Just understand this is very early for numbers for us. We're giving you what we exist today to continue exactly what we have. This is what it's gonna cost us. And then anything new, we'll be bringing to you in July.
Okay, that's helpful. There's such a wide breadth of information that we're going over that I don't wanna be like, okay, I remember that we needed public works retention, but then what did we say about assignment pay? Or you know what I mean? I want it.
No, and this is why it's very important now to understand that budget calendar. We are gonna be coming back to y'all multiple times, and so we will have we are writing notes right and left. We are going to make sure that we address these things as we come through the process. This is just really early for us to be talking numbers.
Got it.
And so I kind of panicked a little bit, I'll be honest. He knows I panicked a lot because we're really not to that point to where we can give you hard numbers. What we give you is just status quo.
Got it.
And really those increases you'll see are status quo. exactly the same.
Right.
Now, it's a $1 million worth of additional operations in the general fund, but it mostly is because of fuel and health insurance and electricity. And so the departments have done a very good job of not requesting pie in the sky things. They have asked for really what they need to continue operations at the current level, knowing that we are increasing all these costs for commodities and electricity and fuel and health insurance. And so you will see that in time.
Thank you. I'm good.
Any other questions? Okay. Yes, and it'll be here under water. Don't miss it when I get to water. Okay, utility construction, which has been a department we kind of formed a number of years ago. It used to be distribution and collection, which didn't mean a whole lot to citizens, so we kind of changed the name and expanded it to utility construction, run by Mr. Jason Smith, and he's doing a great job. So, at this point, we've got one vacancy. I think, is that still correct, Jason? Yeah. Yes. One vacancy. These things change every day, so we'll be looking to fill that this year. This is for our construction inspector position. So, but other than that, Jason's done pretty well at keeping crews on the ground, so we're kind of pleased with that answer. So as far as their proposed budget, let me turn over to that. So we do see an increase of about $198,000. So in this particular case, over 52, almost 53,000 of that is just in fuel costs for him. They burn a lot of fuel with equipment and vehicles. Some material cost changes. So one thing this department does is constantly buys fittings and valves and pipes and things that have just gone up every day sometimes, every week. So we've adjusted some of his budget just to try to allow him to buy the same thing he bought last week, and it is certainly more. And then we're not sure exactly, but about 116,000 of it is in utility cost, in electrical cost. You would think, why would utility construction have that? It's kind of a holdover from many, many years ago. I think a bunch of the lift stations, the pump stations, have meters on them, and they were all tagged to this department. So even though Jason may help maintain those and work on them, the electrical meters are charged to him. So about 116,000 of that increase is tagged just to electrical cost. He doesn't burn that much electricity at his shop. So, let me go real quick and see. And I don't think there's anything other unique here. Yeah. Okay, so supplemental packages. So, and these again are in kind of order, although I think they're all priority items for this department, but a hydro excavation trailer, and then we've got two vehicle replacements. One's a backhoe, one's a vehicle. Did we have sinking funds on those?
Yes, this is utility fund, yes.
Okay, so we have sinking funds on those. Yay. And then a dirt storage building. How do you like storing dirt? So every project that they go out on, they excavate holes in the middle of the night, usually full of water. You don't want to know what kind. And they have to go back in the repair and fill the hole back up. Well, the water, mud, muck that was in there is not appropriate. So we have to import material, rock and dirt, to fill the hole in the street or behind the curb that blew out. And we have to keep those materials to literally bring out there. Well, so if we just had a 4-inch rain, our stockpile of dirt is no better than the mud we just pulled out of the hole, and we struggle with getting dry materials. So this would be just a pole barn of sorts, but a big shed that would allow us to cover some of our materials. It's open-sided, but cover it from rain. And that's something that's been on our discussion for a number of years to try to help these guys have dry materials, which speeds up their response and repair time. They're looking for a new mower, a 20-foot utility trailer. I think most of our pipe joints are 20 feet. So hauling full-length pipe is tough if you have the shorter trailers, the 16-foot trailers. They have to hang off the end. And then another replacement for our air compressor, our current unit 691. Those things just have a life, and we're getting close to the end of life, I think, with that. So, are there any questions on any of the supplemental items? Like I say, two of the two vehicles have a sinking fund. Nothing. I don't believe anything else does, Pam. Yeah.
All right, if there's no questions, we'll move on to water utilities.
Okay, water utilities is split up into two sub-departments, which is water production and wastewater treatment. You can see we have a total complement of 21 employees and currently 1 vacancy. So we feel very good about having a number of operators and workers on the ground that we need. That is good news as well. Our vacant position is actually a recently created position for a maintenance mechanic. A much longer story made short, when we created utility construction we just talked about, we took some personnel from this group and are using them as a crew to do utility repairs. So they still come and help Bart at the plant fix stuff, but they are also now tasked with fixing water and sewer lines in the street. And so what we found out is that the plant kind of suffers sometimes because these guys are out on a job, and the plant just needs a mechanic for all of this. And so we're proposing to try to fill that position. So that position was approved previously. We're trying to fill it. So it's a rather unique resume, and so we have yet to find somebody that is a good mechanic on sewer plant clarifiers, but we're looking. So that's our vacancy. It is not stopping our operations, and that's the good news. But we think it'll be a supplement to help us keep the nuts and bolts fixed and together. So in water production, we are actually a little lower in budget, and this is a complicated, kind of a complicated budget, meaning there's a whole lot of components to it. So Pam and I spent quite a bit of time looking at this in wastewater, and part of what had previously been, I guess, equipment, maintenance, facility maintenance categories, they were huge, they were big numbers, y'all, and they've always been big numbers. Part embedded in there is when these guys say, hey, we need a new effluent pump but it's $52,000 pump. And we need this. And what they really were was some really large components that in fact should be capital purchases, not operations budget. So where do you draw the line with that? Pam and I just spent some time trying to make that definition. And so what happened is we moved out some of the bigger items and we put them over as capital, which reduced the overall budget of this department. We're still buying some pumps and clamps and things to fix stuff and keep stuff moving, but all the big boy things that literally were projects almost have been moved out and are paid for by capital. So they are still there, they're just in a different category. So their budget actually saw a decrease because of that, the amount that we vacuumed out of that, which I think Pam was north of 140,000 or so, to give you perspective. So that is, of course, a lot of our savings is offset by a estimated $321,000 increase in electrical, which I think will be higher than that. So we also have some alternating projects. So next year when we come to see you, we're going to be cleaning lagoons at the surface water plant again. All the silt and the muck. And there's several $100,000, but we don't have to do it every year. So that was in the budget, it's now come out. So there's some things like that that come in and out of our budget. Anything in the water utilities world is big numbers. So, those things are hundreds and hundreds of thousands as we do it. But good answer is that it all netted down, even with our fuel increase. I think we're looking at a decrease of $152,000. And again, that includes the stuff that we moved to capital projects. So, any questions? Sure, on the back for a minute. Yeah, absolutely.
So this is actually really not a question for you because I think it's a bigger question. The backflow preventer valve issue came up a year ago, and we had proposed some plans on how to deal with it. And we've been somewhat successful, but not nearly as successful, right, as we had hoped to be. And to me, this is an issue beyond engineering, because we have engineers devoting their time to communications, or when the issue is communications. I think I asked you, Mr. Bartlett, what the biggest issue was, and you said it was actually communications and tracking. It's beyond just communications. It's tracking who has gotten the backflow valves and who has not, and then following up on that. So it's a huge issue, and again, this is something that we need program management about, that we need to actually have some plans that we're theorizing. That's what we did last year. We theorized if we contracted out this, that it would be successful, and it proved not to be successful. So we really need a solid plan about how we're communicating with businesses, how we're tracking the valves, how we're then following up. We need a real solid plan, and we need people to track. And I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm just hate to spend engineering dollars. You know, the time. Mr. Bartlett, I know, is paid a lot more than. I hope you're paid a lot more than somebody who just sits down and tracks and you know, does some project management. So I would hope you all address that in the next one, because this could cost us, I mean, what was the fine last time?
63,000, that we worked that down.
Right, but what do you think the fine will be this time? And we're behind, we're already failed in their eyes.
I hope to not speculate on that, but, you know, certainly we are subject to their critique again. I mean,
Yeah, because our deadline's long past, right?
well, we fulfilled the list of backflow preventers, and we've provided them evidence of that. So we are done. Now they can come back and revisit the same scene with us again.
I thought we were behind, and we hadn't, because when we checked up on them, they were not successful, or there was a 97% failure.
Right, and we're,
Could you
we're still
explain
in
that?
progress with that daily, every day. So they gave us a list of 129. We were able to cure those.
Okay, the 129.
Yes, ma'am,
right.
those are cured, done, in place, tested, and functioning. And then part of what we told them in our operations plan is that we were gonna hire firms, we were gonna do
Right.
business-by-business inspections, we were gonna go through the process. We felt it would take us at least a couple of years to get through it. That was optimistic.
Yeah.
It was. And we're just in the middle of that part of what we promised them. Now, we can show that we have done exactly as we promised them, because we've dedicated over $200,000, $75,000 to each of 3 firms, $225,000 towards getting these inspections done and trying to quantify who they are and where they are and what they are. And so we're still doing that. So yeah, I think we can show that we have spent a lot of energy and effort to try to be compliant. Don't know exactly how they're going to react, and
Are we compliant?
we are still trying to be compliant.
Right,
No,
but-
we do not have nearly everybody.
Right, we're way off, right, in compliance,
No,
right?
we're a ways
Okay,
away.
and I'm not, this is nothing,
no,
I
we're
know,
ways away.
it is not a critique against, you know, of your work, it's just I'm saying we don't want another huge fine. And I started doing some research, you know, with other cities, and they have things in place. We
They're
need,
compliant? I mean, is that what you're
Yeah.
seeing? Are we typical, or are we
oh, no,
atypical?
we were the worst in the state, I think, was
Well,
the.
we had the highest fine in the state there.
Okay, the highest fine, but still, so what happens is it's not just that we're putting in the effort, but we will put in the effort, but then we are, we're not getting the compliance is what it is. And part of the issue is we don't want to hurt, you know, businesses, and we want to work with businesses, but we've just got a bigger issue to deal with, and I think if you put together a plan and actually, you know, give the data again. I mean, I actually wrote down the data. I didn't bring it with me, but it was startling. And that is something beyond the engineering department, I think. It's just, how do you track this? How do you work with businesses? How do you you know, follow up? How do you make sure that they become compliant? Because we're way out of compliance.
In other cities that you looked at, are they less lenient than we are? Is that an issue?
So I think we've got a bigger, I think some of our issues, like with customer services, we want to reply back right away, or we want to, and I think part of the issue is we need to have policies that we actually enforce. So they enforce them regularly, and it's not necessarily lenient. So say commercial bank, you know.
We finally got it done,
I know you-
35,000 later.
Right. And I know it's a huge deal, so we can be as nice as, you know, and you pretty much have to, but some other people say, well, they haven't shut me down yet, or they haven't shut me down. So being extra nice sometimes means unequal enforcement, and so I think we just have to have policies. They have to be transparent. They have to be out there, and other people need to, you know, rather than our engineers, I mean, think about how to have, to track it all. And actually, you know, say, maybe give a month and say, we're gonna start doing, whatever, that's your deal. How you do it is yours. So I'm asking you to come up with a proposal that'll actually deal with it, and that will, again, have goals, objectives, tie dollars to it. I know it's a serious issue, so I was trying to see where the dollars were. That's really what I'm, so that you can, I mean, you all can figure out how to do it, but it just needs to be done.
Ms. Ballinger, let me
plan.
clarify a couple things. So
Sure.
I think Mr. Ronnie Lyles, who's here tonight, has done a fine job of keeping up with it. So I think administratively, we've tracked it, we're on them. Ronnie and I talk very frequently about this, and it has become a lot of his full-time job. That may not be highest and best use for Ronnie.
Right,
So
that's what I was
understand
gonna
what
ask
you're
you.
saying. But I do want you to know that we haven't not done
Right,
this.
right,
We
right.
have diverted Ronnie and some other time, Joy's time and some other people to do it. So the point is, and when I visited with y'all last, what we promised is that we would look at a couple of alternatives. One was to add staff in-house to do this, and how that would look, and the other was to look at some outsourcing alternatives. And so I think we've put together the mechanics of that. Pam and I need to get together and finalize those dollars, and hopefully that will be something additional. It is not baked into what I have for you, because we were still kind of pulling it
Right,
together. So we
right.
haven't ignored it, and we're not doing the work, but we've diverted folks to try to keep this up so that we do have full-time energy in it. So I want you to know we will come to you with those, and there will be some cost involved in it, sure.
But I do hope that we can reduce the number of hours spent by people who, you know, who are trained to do other things, to do
Well,
some of this.
that would be our goal too.
Right, okay. So I didn't see it in this plan, but I look
You know,
forward to it.
on ours at the bank that we were talking about, it took engineering work because we had to move the connection to the bank, so we didn't put the backflow preventer in the middle of the sidewalk, because the connection to the bank comes through the sidewalk. So, I mean, it's just complicated in some of those places.
Well, I hope, let me clarify. I'm not saying engineers don't need to do engineering work. I really appreciate you doing your engineering work, but I would really rather our engineers do that engineering work instead of tracking, calling people, following up, you know, sending out letters. And we actually are using that contractor and they charge the companies $10 a piece just to send out the letters. If we analyze this and actually, you know, have some program management, you know, I'd be able to save that $10 and actually implement something else. So don't get me wrong, I know some of it is engineering, but you paid the engineers to do it. And,
No,
right?
the city did a part of it. We
Okay.
shared,
Right.
we made it work.
Right. So, but anyway, I totally appreciate our engineers. I think you all, but I'd like you to be able to engineer. And so that's my 2 cents worth of, and come up with a plan that really, and it may be a shared staff person, it may be somebody not in engineering, because I know you share positions with other places, but there's a huge time allotment in this. So
There is.
that's my 2 cents. Thank you for letting me ask that.
Any other questions in water utilities?
I think we're good to go to wastewater.
Oh, I'm sorry, I need to go supplemental, Mayor.
Oh, did you hit wastewater?
Back up to wastewater.
No, did I do?
Yep.
Wastewater, there we go. My apologies. Let me get over to that. Okay, so, as you can see, we are up about $270,000 over prior year's budget. Let me give you just the highlights of that. We have seen increased cost in our facilities maintenance, so, a lot of that's cost of parts and things and labor to fix things, so we have increased our budget by $75,000 in water and wastewater facility maintenance. We have $191,000 in the utilities and electrical, which again, we think will be higher than that. We have increased our consulting services budget a little bit by $50,000, and this has to do with our pre-treatment program. TCQ has come in, they've done an audit, and they want us to go through a program for copper monitoring and reduction and some things that they kind of surprised us with. And so we've got to use it's beyond the capabilities of our staff, technically and just physically, and so we'll be using some consultants to help us deal with it. And I will tell you, council, the pre-treatment program has gone from one person who managed it and grease traps and everything all in one day to a staff of 3 who struggled to manage it without a consultant. So the regulatory environment has just changed, and we can someday go through all the details of that, but I would tell you it's much more strenuous for us, and the expertise required is pretty significant. And so we have a great consultant that specializes in pre-treatment programs, and they literally help us navigate the state, and quite honestly have kept us from getting fines. And so you may want me to quantify that. I don't think I can, other than I think that they have probably paid their way with us in the past. So we've upped that budget for $50,000 next year over the course of the year to let them help us develop this copper program and still help us go through the normal pre-treatment. So that's an increase. Let's see, and then fuel costs. Fuel and personnel are the bulk of where those numbers came from. Questions?
So the 250,000 increase in contract services is made, you mentioned the TCQ under wastewater, right?
Yes.
Under contract services, but you had mentioned fuel, and that fuel wouldn't be in that, would
No,
it?
it's utilities, it's electricity, it's
Okay.
191,000 was
In
electricity.
contract
Yeah, contract
services?
services is Encore.
Gotcha,
Yeah.
I got you, okay.
Yeah, that's 191 of that.
I got you.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and that always catches me too. I say
I was thinking a
contract.
contractor, yeah.
Contract, yeah.
I got you.
So, that's why I'm not an accountant, Okay, and then supplemental items, and so, we think both of these are essential, and so, I can't tell you their priority order, they're both very, very important. First one is a portable chlorine trailer, and this is basically a portable unit we can go out, hook up into our system and add chlorine in the system. So one of the biggest struggles a water system has is maintaining their disinfection levels across many miles of things. Sometimes we have dead ends and things that just stagnate, and I don't mean stagnant, but the chlorine levels drop below where we would like, and we need to give them a boost sometimes. So what we do is we flush millions and millions and millions of gallons of treated water on the ground every month, millions. So I interestingly got a call about Central Heights here a few weeks ago, and they said, y'all have got a busted fire hydrant, it is going wide open, and it's been going around the clock. And so I contact our folks, and they say, yeah, where our chlorine residuals dropped, we're flushing to bring new water in, and we flushed estimated over 2 million gallons on the ground that weekend. And so what I'm telling you is this chlorine trailer would grossly limit, if not eliminate, some of those things. It would pay for itself very, very quickly. So we wasted 2 million gallons just to get our chlorine content up, because we have no other way to do it other than to move fresh water into the system. So we think it is very much will pay for itself before it gets out of the yard. So, and then the pre-treatment software, you talked a while ago about tracking and administration. This is a software strategically built for us to track our fats, oils, and greases in restaurants, and for our 5 significant industrial users, the Pilgrim's Pride, the NIBCOs, and the people. We have a whole series of permitting with them and things we check and do. And this is software to help us bundle all that data, track it, and produce what we need. And so this would go for our environmental coordinator and the 2 folks who work with her to just help them work on all these folks. So this is normal software. Right now we're doing it in spreadsheets and yellow tablets, and we need to migrate upwards with that. So those are our 2 requests. Okay, any other questions for wastewater flows downhill?
On to sanitation.
On to sanitation. Okay. Okay, so we have some vacancies in sanitation, and we've been, talking about that when we were talking about brush trucks and drivers, and so, you can see that we have 6 vacancies now. Carrie, is that still valid?
We actually have one in sanitation disposal.
And one in sanitation disposal now, so these things are so dynamic, so. So we are, trying to reclassify positions. We're trying to add full-time labor. We have been using, contract temporary labor. And so one of the things you'll see in a minute is a request to add a full-time position, but we have been previously funding contract labor through a contract supply, labor supply person. And we'd like to bring them in and then literally up-train them and cross-train them. Again, this is our grow our own instead of renting a person. So that's actually gonna be a new request to us. But we are struggling to, just like we talked about CDL drivers, folks, because all these folks have to be CDL drivers. So training them or finding them right now to drive, whether it's garbage trucks or leaf truck or the brush truck, they're all CDL drivers, and that's been a challenge. So the budget expense for a collection is up about $183,000. This is pretty much comprised of 2 things, or 3 things I should say: increased insurance cost, of course, but mostly fuel, and $50,000 in additional dumpster costs. So we buy dumpsters every year. Dumpsters wear out. We get new accounts. We have to buy dumpsters for to give them a new account, and those dumpster costs have increased dramatically. So some things are crazy. So we have budgeted an additional $50,000 to go towards dumpsters. So that, yeah, that change of $183,000, like I say, is mostly 150,000 of it's fuel, and 50,000 of it is dumpsters. Any questions? So this is sanitation disposal, which is the landfill part of the equation, and they are also up a little bit in budget. It is all, pretty much all fuel. So same story. Got some big boy equipment out there that burns a lot of fuel as well. So no particular special items there. So sanitation administration is just, that's just Carrie, isn't it, in
No,
that?
this is actually the ladies.
This is the ladies in the office.
And the new code enforcement that
And
is
then-
assigned
oh, that's
for
right.
us.
One of our code enforcement officers is funded under sanitation, and rightly so, for litter type stuff. And so, yeah, so this, I'm sorry, this includes them. Thank you, Pam.
And that's the difference between the 2021 actual now, is because last year y'all did approve that new position as well as us shifting and splitting those departments. So that's why there's such a large difference between the last 2 years.
Yep, and I will tell you, this is where Pam alluded to earlier that we did have a typo.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
nothing-
10,000 of that personnel is a typo of
Yeah.
mine.
It was supposed to be 1,000 or something, it had a decimal issue, so that will actually get a lot closer.
Where's that? Which one?
In the personnel
Personnel,
cost, it
right
should be 169, not
Oh,
179.
Okay, I got it.
And also, and this is just internal accounting, but we have split the internet between, I guess, all used to be paid by one department, and we've split it half over landfill and half at Public Works, which is really the way it's physically being used. So the cost for internet was bundled all in one side, and we split it over. So there appears to be about a $6,700 increase in communication services, and it's really just their pro rata share of internet that was coming out of a different category. So, so anyway, I think we're about 9,800 when you look at that difference, and that, oh, that's with before the error, so it's even less than that. So. Any other questions? Okay, so this is what we alluded to a while ago. We've been using contract labor, and Mr. Walker would like to add actual personnel position, an FTE. Their total drive-out cost is estimated at $43,650. Of course, that's with all benefits and everything that packs with it. And so we are asking for a new employee, again, partially offset by what we've been spending on contract labor, and hope hopefully grow this person and get them a CDL. And I will tell you, when we started out the process, talking to Mario, talking to Pam, all of our departments knew that adding a bunch of personnel was just not gonna be on the agenda. So everybody was very strategic about how to work through this. This was one exception that we thought merited your consideration of adding new personnel. But everybody held back a lot on, not trying to add a bunch of new staff, so. Okay, capital expenses. So we buy garbage trucks every year, 2 every year. These are in a sinking fund, a depreciation account. And then so is the truck, Public Works Manager replacement truck is also in a depreciation fund. So all of those should have funding behind them available. The truck wash bay, so right now we don't have a good place on site to wash our trucks, garbage trucks when they come in. And so we'd like to build a truck wash bay, we have to capture the water, go through silt traps. I mean, there's a whole series of things you do when you wash cars or trucks. And so we'd like to build a facility like that. That's a rough estimate, we haven't designed one, so we may be able to come in under that on site. But it's basically a big concrete pad, drainage, and then pressure washing systems and a little roof cover is kind of what that project is.
Watch where you put the drainage.
Watch where you put the drain. It goes into the sewer. It goes into the sewer. So at the landfill, a new dozer, new D6 dozer, and that's also in a depreciation fund. And a scale house generator is not, but when the power goes down and we want to still operate the landfill, our scale house is not operational. So we'd like to have an on-site permanent generator built there to get us through power outage issues. And interestingly, the hottest place to be during a hurricane or a major disaster is bringing debris to the landfill. So being able to run them through the scale house, have staff at the scale house is honestly quite a critical thing. So we don't shut down. That's when we're open full gate. So we think being able to have a generator to keep that facility operational around the clock if we need is important. Okay, end of slideshow. Any questions on landfill or sanitation? Collection?
I have one little question. It's just because I'm old, but for years I keep seeing we need this so that we can save it out of this part. And I always see the addition, but I don't see the savings where it's taken out of it. So you understand what I'm saying? So if we're, like, for example, we're hiring the staff person, and that'll reduce our contract costs, but that's just one example. Or does that show the reduction in the contract costs? Or, but it's several places.
So, without knowing specifics, yes, towards the end of the process, if you approve a new position that is,
Right.
is replacing contract labor.
Yes.
What you're seeing now is the contract labor, because that's what's
It's still
existing
in there,
today.
yeah.
Right.
If you decide that you want to replace the contract labor with the new position,
Then that'll
what
be-
I will do is remove the contract labor and put in the new position, but I can't do that until you approve it.
Okay,
And so
thanks.
that happens after approval.
It's just something I
She won't give me
noticed.
both.
Yes, I will give them both.
Okay, thank you.
I've tried.
Appreciate it.
Anybody else?
I know we're departing, and I want to be cognizant of everyone's time, but the things that I heard today is come up with thank you. Things that I heard today is obviously come up with the police staffing plan when it comes to not only just recruiting new, but also retaining existing, correct? And program for that and the costs associated with that. And then an overall sort of a plan to address just staffing issues in general of the other departments, whether it's, again, looking at pay, assignment pay, those kinds of things. And obviously the cost that goes along with that. Is that correct? And then the backflow prevention program as well, whether it's outsourcing, whatever, but just again, to try to streamline and better use of existing staff so we're not bogged down with that program. Those are kind of the three main issues. I mean, there's a lot of other things, but kind of the three main components that I heard from today.
So I also specifically asked for a Lufkin comparison and also for the last 4 years of the staffing in the police.
officers. I have that on my list.
Okay,
yes.
thank
Yeah, and I
you.
don't think just Lufkin, I think we'd like to see some other.
Yeah,
Right,
areas
right,
too,
right.
That's what I'm-
because it may not be apples to apples because of the unionization or whatever that's called that they've got.
And with all of these, I'd like to see, you know, I mean, it's just the researcher in me. We are theorizing these things, so I'd like to have targets, you know, so I'd like to have the plan have goals and objectives and what we're, the tasks and who's gonna do what, and then the dollars attached to them, and then I'd like to review it in, 3 months and to see how we did it, because we're just theorizing these things, and so it's helpful we can start building a track record.
Okay, that's all I need. Thank you.
Okay, nothing else, we're adjourned.